Architecture Review and Historic Preservation for the Village of Southampton. With me are board members tonight, Jeff Broadleib and John Gregory. With three, we have quorum, so I'm going to move that we open the February 27th meeting of the Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation. Do I have a second?
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. First thing on the agenda tonight is minutes approval from February 13th, and I'm going to ask that we postpone that approval because I haven't had time to go through them.
Actually, I haven't either.
Okay. So the next thing on the agenda are written decisions, and the first written decision is for Richard Gormley and Salaika Zaruk at 80 North Main Street, which is for the addition of a pool house, porch addition, bay window, and portico. Did you guys have a chance to read the written decisions?
We did.
Yes.
Okay.
I did.
And I'm going to move that we accept the written decision for 80 North Main Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All of them. Second is the Village of Southampton Historic Museum at 17 Meeting House Lane for the construction of an arbor. Did you guys have a chance to read the written decision?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna move that we accept the decision as written. Do I have a second?
Yep. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Third in written decision is for 218 Pond Lane for a renovation to an existing dwelling. Have you had a chance to read the written decision?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm going to move that we accept the written decision for 218 Pond Lane. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And fourth, we had a written decision for 292 Ox Pasture LLC for a certificate of appropriateness under Code Section 65-4. Did you guys have a chance to read
Yep.
the decision?
Mhm.
And I'm going to move that we accept the written decision for the certificate. Do I have a second?
Oh,
All in
yes.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is public hearings historic. First is a carryover item, which is number 2 Gin Lane for the renovation and relocation of existing dwelling. Is the applicant present?
Okay. Sure. I need to grab an agenda. I forgot to get one. Okay.
Here's a spare. Is the applicant, are they coming in? Great. Thank you.
There we are, I think we're here.
Oh, hello.
Hi, hello.
How are you?
Very good, thanks, thank you all.
Great.
Brian Sawyer with Sawyer Bursa, and thank you, board, for once again your time and consideration
Of course.
with our application. And I'm just gonna jump right here to what's on our screen, which is the site plan. And wanted to mention again that we, this, the project has been a fascinating one, and really dealing with a beautiful old house like this is a special opportunity for us. And the extensive work we've done with Zach Studenroth along the way has really resulted, we feel and hope you feel, in a positive, a very positive and productive outcome for the restoration and moving of this house. As you know, both of Zach's reports are in your file, along with the written confirmation from our adjacent neighbors in support of this project. But I'm just going to jump to what are the updates requested from our last meeting.
Thank you.
Which are principally the front door. So we are showing here an elevation, our front door put back in the existing location as you see on this drawing. And we have also removed the pediment that we had suggested prior to this, which was above the front door. So again, it's been put back into its existing original position, and we have removed that pediment. And that, together with the other modifications which we had made, we think brings the house up to what you are hoping for. We have also redone our 3D rendering from Gin Lane, which shows the appearance of that front door in its location as per our two-dimensional drawing.
Great.
Just as a side note, we've taken the front gate out of this presentation.
Yes, thank you. And you're replacing that door, is it replacing kind of what's currently there?
It is in kind, but we have adjusted the proportion and number of the panes to reflect the spirit of our double hung windows throughout the house, which are in general the 16/1 sashes as we presented prior to those. So
Okay.
we've divided the glass slightly differently so that it's cousin to the windows that we're proposing for the house.
Okay,
So essentially just matches the windows, the replacement
Yeah.
windows.
okay, board members?
I think it's fine. I think it's a beautiful renovation. So, no problems for me.
Yeah, no objections.
Do I have any comments from the public? Pardon?
I have a hand raised.
Okay. Hello?
It's like mission control.
Oh, I'm sorry, I must have missed something.
I think the board is muted. I see the mute
I see
logo
the
up.
word muted.
Are
Yeah.
they here for this application?
Yeah, I think that's one of the architects.
Okay.
Pardon me, I'm not sure if we're audible or you're not audible to us.
We can hear you. Or can you?
We can hear you.
Can you not hear us?
We were waiting for public comment.
Oh, there, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's okay. I don't think there is public comment.
Yeah, I just got that hand, so.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I think she was here with, okay. From my perspective, I think you've done a masterful job working at a house, an important house for the village. And I appreciate that you've taken so much time, both in 2 sets of walkthroughs, listening to our comments, adjusting basing to our comments, and I think we're at a place to move forward now. And I appreciate the updated drawings, the updated renderings, so thank you very much.
You're
So-
welcome. It's our pleasure.
So if I have no further comment, I'm going to move that we close the record for 2 Gin Lane at 2 Gin Lane LLC for the renovation relocation of existing dwelling for written decision to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so next on the list is 266 North Main Street has been adjourned. Do we need to, did we adjourn that last week or do we do?
No,
adjourn
this
it?
is a current request.
Okay, so I move that we accept the applicant's request for an adjournment to March 13th for 266 North Main Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next on the list is a new matter, which is 288 Halsey Neck, which is asked to be adjourned
Oh.
to April 10th.
First, we should take jurisdiction.
That's a new one,
I'm
isn't it?
confused
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we're adjourning a new matter.
Yeah, that's okay. They did do their noticing, so we can, I can tell you that the affidavits are in order, and now we can vote on the adjournment.
Okay. So I have to move that we accept the applicant's request to adjourn to April 10th?
Yes.
Okay. For Chester House LLC at 288 Halsey Neck Lane for the proposed addition exterior alteration to an existing dwelling. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. So, John, you
All
got
in
it.
favor?
Aye.
Okay, and next up is 242 South Main Street LLC. Do you have affidavits and are they in order?
We do. They're in order, and we should also say that we did have a site visit prior to this official application coming in.
Great. Okay, would you start by introducing yourself, please?
And David Gilmartin Jr. from the law firm Greenberg Troy, 2317 Montauk Highway. I have with us tonight our historic consultant, Zach Studenroth, and our architect, Brian Glazer. The background of this property, after our clients bought it, they tasked us with first determining what were the add-ons to the structure, and there are several, and Zach will go through that. Once we're able to determine those, and you can see in front of you a plan which would show their removal, we were then tasked with trying to do an addition that would be in keeping with the historic nature of the project, and Brian will speak to that. I think we're very proud of the product that we have here, and I would ask Zach to come up and deal initially with the challenge that we had in figuring out what was there.
Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, board members. This was a big challenge,
Can you,
and
I'm sorry, can you
Zach
actually-
Studenroth,
For the record.
architectural and historical consultant to the applicant. This is good? Okay. When we looked at this together, this would be, I guess, last summer or into the fall, I had my reservations because it's a difficult house to tackle, and it was clear that what was needed is a very comprehensive assessment of what's actually there, and then formulating some kind of a plan that would bring it back together again architecturally and aesthetically. If you read the nomination form, I think there's some phrase to the effect that it's been extensively altered or something to that. And I recall back in the early days when I was doing those forms, that's always a tough call because you realize it's a historical dwelling, it's been added to and lost its architectural integrity, but it's still standing there, and it has such a prominent location on South Main Street. So certainly a decision was made at that time to keep it in. But that was fine in the day. That was, 30 or 40 years ago. So now we fast forward to now, and what do we do with that? So clearly we needed to do a pretty thorough assessment of what had been added to and approximately when. That wasn't that important. And by pulling the property card, you see that every side of the building was enlarged, all in the 70s and in the 80s, and importantly, before the historic district was created. So all of that was enlarged in that period, and successively losing its aesthetic appeal and integrity. So that's what's been done, and I think Brian has done a wonderful job showing that graphically. I don't recall any project of this scale that really required a presentation of this sort that would clearly show what's really in there, what's at the core of this building, and then what are all these additions which prevent us from really seeing and appreciating what that core house is. So that's what the board is, that he will go through in greater detail, showing those additions. And then one other, I think, item that he will certainly go into in greater depth that compromises a solution to this is the fact that the lot has been foreshortened. So a flag lot was carved out behind it. And that effectively made it more challenging from an architectural standpoint to find a way to enlarge the house without running it all along the Main Street, South Main, which is the buildable envelope. And so how do you address those challenges? So initially envisioning taking these additions away and then restoring that original section, taking its vocabulary in terms of window sashes and roof lines and all the rest of it. And then I think he's done a very effective job of enlarging the house in such a way that the main block of it sits lower than the main house, which is what you want to see in terms of maintaining the focus on the original building. So the ridgeline steps down, I don't know, he'll show you maybe some 2 or maybe 3 feet. And then at the terminus, there's an even lower porch, an open porch at the southerly end of the house, which kind of emphasizes that it's stepping down. So even though it's a long addition, it's still subservient to the original structure. You know the history of this, I'm sure. Sally wrote about it, and in her houses on South Main Street back in 2015. And she says, "It survives today, but since its construction has been enlarged and altered to such a degree that its original aesthetic is nearly impossible to discern to the passerby," which is a very, very accurate and apt kind of description. You'll also see a longer description of this. The Historical Society Museum, I should say, has quite a number of these interesting vignettes that they've posted on their website, and they have one there. Mary Cummings wrote this, and she points to the interiors being surviving, several of which do. Of course, that's not within your, in the discussion. Those, by the way, will be largely preserved. But she talks about how it's been greatly altered, and that's what it is. We all can appreciate that. So I think for me, looking at in this perspective in terms of these large houses and the challenges that they are, to kind of tackle something like this is frankly commendable. You know, a house like this, it's hard to visualize it, but when you take those additions off, the original building emerges. We actually discovered a wonderful marble block that's carved with the original date. It's 1889, isn't it, Brian? Yeah. So 1889 is carved, beautifully carved in the basement, embedded in the brickwork. So that's surviving. So that's the house. I think it's been described occasionally as Queen Anne in style, and I would say that this is one of these houses which is kind of late for that. It's kind of early for the colonial revival. It hovers right in there. So it's kind of hard to pick an aesthetic or architectural style that would be appropriate, but I think it's really more leaning toward the colonial revival, and those are the kinds of detailing that Brian came up with. So in my estimation, I think it's a very successful outcome and a very attractive house. And I'll turn things over to Brian unless you have a couple of questions you want to fire at me while I'm here. I'm going to be sitting here, so
Anyone?
anything?
I'd rather wait
Not at
until
this
we're
point.
finished.
Okay. So I'll turn it over to our capable architect. Brian, you got the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Brian Glasser. I'm the architect for the project located at 242 South Main Street. Zach kind of went through the historical part of it, and we did have several meetings prior to this hearing. And I'll go through some of the points that were brought up to my attention during those from the board members, previous board members, and current board members. But to get started, I want to just run through the materials that you currently see on the existing house, which basically most of them were not existing. It's just, like Zach mentioned, heavily altered. The house was heavily altered, and cladding over the years have just been added over to it. So just to start, I guess if we start off, I could talk about the existing house a little bit. Basically, the owner of the property was Edward Foster, and this particular house was used as a rental property. So, and we found that it was built in 1889. Going through the materials and what you currently see, the existing brick chimneys, which you can see, these are existing. This one's existing here, and the one to the north. So those red brick chimneys would remain as shown. The current house is showing an asphalt shingled roof, which has been altered multiple times. I looked on Google Earth and it showed a red asphalt roof at one point. The siding that the current house has is currently a white aluminum cladding that's over a natural wood cedar shingle. The windows are a combination of wood, aluminum, fiberglass, which are mostly replacement. The one topic that Sally, who was a previous board member, brought up, we went with Sarah mentioned when we went to the field visit,
Yeah.
was that we had a 2/2, and she was pleased that we found one of the original windows we believe was a 2/2. That was kind of the direction we chose. If you look at the current front of the house there, I think it's a 6/6 or 6/1, which we chose to go over the 2/2, which I think she would have been pleased to see. Also, the trim is aluminum cladding over probably a wood. Pretty much the entire house was cladded in aluminum and an asphalt roof. White aluminum gutters, a K-style gutter system, which doesn't really relate to the architecture of what it was originally designed to be. So moving forward, I was looking at Queen Anne style architecture and tried to get to the root of, that's what this diagram here to the left shows with the red. And Zach mentioned we were trying to get to the original blocking and massing of the house. So you can see we tried to strip away the existing additions and the integrity of what was originally built. We maintain that, and the roof lines that are there pretty much stay as is. Moving forward, can I go over here and walk, just point things out? Is that all right? Okay. So,
Sage, can you pick him up?
I'll give it my best shot.
Okay.
Is that desk mic on there?
Yes.
Yep. So, as we were walking the house, I believe Mark and Sarah were at the meeting. Elise, basically what's going on is that we have the, one of the items was that when we have the current structure, we wanted to push back the additions as far as possible so that the main structure would be present. This was something that Sarah mentioned. If you look at this area, right, there's a lot of moving parts here, so just bear with me a second. So this original structure here, Sarah mentioned that if we could do an addition, which was roughly, I believe, 15 feet beyond, that if we could do all our additions beyond that point, and Mark, you wanted us to also push the garages as far back as possible, which we accomplished. That was one of our goals, just to the natural massing of this house here, to kind of make it stand proud of the front elements.
Can you, on those, on the diagram where it shows the house exploded,
The
can you
massive-
just give us the cardinal directions on the top?
Yes, so this is this
Which?
side right here is the north, this is the
So
north elevation.
This is the north, okay.
And then you have this is the west, which is the front yard. This
Okay.
is the south, and this is the east.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So this is the original, that's one thing that we try to maintain. Zach mentioned that we were trying to maintain the front door and the main foyer. That was gonna maintain as it currently stands, which it's not your normal situation where you would have, where you'd be pulling up to a house and the actual front entry is not facing the street. So we maintain that as it currently stands. The one thing that I tried to accomplish is by adding this roof that wraps around, it still gives you a feeling of entry, so when you come up to the house, you actually can understand that here's the front, and you're kind of wrapping around the driveway to come into the front door.
Mhm. Okay.
That, along with maintaining the actual footprint and the location of the current structure, we didn't change the location of it. The existing structure pretty much sits as it stands proposed. So, what else is going on here? If we were to get into the new materials, just starting off with up at the roof area, we're gonna be going with a red shingle, cedar shingle, with a 5-inch exposure. The brick chimneys, as I mentioned, a red brick we're gonna be matching the red brick on this chimney here to the south. And these two are gonna there's one to I guess the front elevation, and one on which one right here? On the north elevation, which is gonna maintain where they currently stand. Here's probably a good representation of it. So here's the chimney in the front, and here's a chimney to the north, and then the chimney to the south. Windows, we're gonna be going with a 2/2 window by Weather Shield, and they have a signature series. All the trim is gonna end up being a painted white PVC product, like an off-white, to give it more of a historical feeling versus a stark white. What else do we have here? 8-inch chamfered columns to kind of break down the massing so it doesn't look too chunky. They're a little thinner looking, which is more of like a colonial style column. Brackets and corbels would be out of aluminum, out of PVC as well. Those would be, we actually removed those. Now that I think about it, these are old notes. Gutters and leaders, we were going with a copper gutter and leader, half round gutters and round leaders. Bluestone patios. That's pretty much it for the materials. One other thing that Zach did mention and Sarah brought to my attention as well is the height of the structure and breaking down the massing as it goes towards the south where the additions were. Actually roughly, and it kind of worked out because the max building height with the flat roof code, we're roughly 6'6" lower than the max building height for these structures added. So that's this area here, and it steps down another 2 feet as it goes down to the south. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Board members, any questions?
There's just
Questions
one more
or
point that I think is important. You see this is the southern part of the property. There's an existing driveway that comes around to the back, and we sort of call it the driveway to nowhere.
Right.
And we're gonna remove that driveway.
We
as
called
part
that
of
we called that the driveway to land waste, but go ahead, yes.
And then if you look at the site plan, the entrance is here, so it's offset from the existing garage. So, you know, when you drive by, you can look into the property, you'll see the house itself instead of the horseshoe driveway that exists presently. And it's, you know, one of the things that was important to the owner was switching that up and getting rid of that back driveway.
Yeah, we have, so there's currently 3 curb cuts on this property, which will be reducing that down to 1 curb cut, which that's part of the point that
Now,
David brought up.
The garage originally had 2 doors that faced north, right?
South.
Or
Yeah,
south.
south. Yeah,
South,
south.
sorry,
Yeah.
south, and you're changing them to face,
It's no longer gonna be, yeah, it would be facing, if anything, east.
It's gonna be
West,
facing
I'm
east.
sorry, west, yep.
because where the pool is now is where, and the
That's
pool in
the
that
backyard.
is where the driveway came through and went into that garage, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what do we know about that garage structure? Do we know anything about
This
it?
garage structure is pretty much to remain in this, that
No.
access.
It's not contributing, it probably dates from the, I don't know, 50s or 60s. But as far as I know, no change is being proposed to that building, it's just
They're
being
just,
left as is.
they're just moving the openings from from north to, or south to
As a
east.
doorway, I guess.
Good.
But you're not making any architectural changes to it.
Okay.
No.
And the other advantage is the pool, which is attached to the house now,
No, the garage
is visible
garage is
from
separate.
the street.
There's a garage
from
going
Main
in the
Street.
house, yeah.
Right.
So that's going to the backyard.
So that structure that was the garage is turning into a pool house?
This right here,
Yeah.
we're just leaving it as, right now it's currently a garage.
Right.
And to have access to garage parking in the front, you know, it hasn't been discussed at this point. Right now, it
Right now,
cannot-
there's a
it can't
two-car,
be
there's a two-car garage in the new structure.
Yeah, it can't be a garage this way, that's
Right.
correct,
Okay,
because of the
because
loss
you
of
took
this
out,
driveway.
yeah, okay,
It would, if anything, it would be accessible from this direction.
okay.
Just, and this may not pertain to us, but if you have a garage that's not being used as a garage, and then you may use it for something else, I'm just not sure where it is in terms of the GFA and the other things that the building department has to look at. Are we creating, and again, this may not be something that we can get into, but are we creating a situation where they're gonna put in a garage or a pool house or whatever that's gonna require a variance, when in fact they could think that through now?
You know, I forgot to introduce him, but our planner, Alex Wallach, should be on. Alex, are you on?
He's here.
Yes, I am. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah, are you hearing Jeff's question?
I am hearing it. I don't have the answer off the top of my head, but it's something that I can ask the
Well-
building inspector.
Well, but let me ask a question in a different way, or at least make a statement in a different way. With so much care being taken to all the aspects of this house, to have a structure on the house that you know not what you're going to do with, sort of begs my question, and in fact makes me curious and doubtful that you don't have something. in mind for it.
Yeah, no, so when we went into this, the first thing we did was an analysis on, stay here,
Okay,
is, the square footages of the current house
yeah.
as it stands. And our intent was always to maintain exactly what was there. And it was my understanding, and it's on our drawings, that whatever was currently proposed or currently existing, we were maintaining those square footages. And that's,
Right.
and that was, from my understanding, okay with the building department.
Well, the existing house.
The existing house, all existing structures on the property.
Right, but you're adding, aren't
No,
you?
but we're taking, that's the thing, if you look at the cover sheet, we're removing square footage and we're adding it back.
Net, net.
He's saying it'll
One
match
for-
exactly.
One for one?
Yes, 1-for-1, yes.
Okay, all right,
And we've had conversations with Tin and,
okay. It still
Yeah.
puzzles me that you haven't thought about what you're gonna do with a structure. when
the
you-
structure, the geometry of the existing structure was not historic. It was built in.
No, I know, but I'm talking,
Oh.
I'm talking about stuff that I don't know anything about, that's not before us, but I don't want to approve something that's then going to require a variance, and then you're going to say, well, shoot, you know, we have to now, we have no choice. Well, you do have a choice now to plan it all out.
Yeah.
If I could jump in, obviously, not obviously, I don't mean to say it that way, but any alteration, improvement, destruction, anything else would require another application.
I understand,
To
I
make-
understand.
To make the garage look more architectural, for
I'm not,
example.
okay,
anything
again,
like that.
I'm going beyond the purview here. All I'm saying is, I don't understand how somebody comes before us with all this work and doesn't have a plan for a structure. And it just leaves me curious, at the very least, suspicious at the worst, as to what you're doing with that. And is that going to create a problem later on? And I don't see why, again, with all the smarts that you have on your staff, that you don't have a plan for that structure.
Well, you could actually say that this is incomplete because of that.
The plan for the structure right now is to use it for storage. If there's a future use for that, then we'll go to that. It, like you said, was not part of the purview of this, and our focus and concentration was on the structure, the historic structure itself. But right now, the plan is for storage, and if that plan changes, then we'll adapt and we'll do what we have to do with the building department or a zoning board or whatever it is going forward. But we are entitled to use that as storage, and that's the current plan.
Okay.
And you're showing a gate on the plan as well. I assume that's going to be presented separately as well.
We're in the process of having a landscape architect come up. Right now, this
So there's,
presentation, I just did a pretty picture landscape. I was a little bit intimidated by doing the actual architecture, so,
the question was,
yeah.
you're showing a proposed gate. That is not a part of what is being approved.
Yeah, our landscape architect will be, yes, correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
In the original plan, or the house as it exists right now, one of the things that makes old houses interesting, actually, is right now there's a quirky entrance where when you face the house, you enter the porch through an opening on the right-hand side, go down, and you go in sideways, where there's apparently an addition that was put on that you're removing. And now you're putting, can you just take me through what you're removing and where that wraparound porch? Because they're sort of changing.
So this was an addition put on, I'm not exactly sure which time because the card doesn't tell us when, but the addition in this area, which is on the north, the entrance is right here. So if you look at, here's from the street view, which is this is the west, and right here. So here's the
Yeah.
front elevation from the north, correct? So this structure would be getting removed and we're replacing it with a single-story wraparound structure that ties in this elevation, which is on the north, to the west elevation, which is right here. So I basically wrapped that around the corner and broke down the massing of this two-story structure.
And what do we don't know when that addition was done.
Yeah, that was done in the 70s.
And we-
So
and
that
what-
second
and
story-
do we know what they took off when they did that?
They didn't, they just infilled, in other words,
They just
they
put it in.
brought, yeah, if you go into the structure, if, on the second story, if you walk into that room, which sits above the porch below, you can see that they moved the windows out to the exterior wall. So they built a second-story room above the open porch. Had that arched, that sort of arched, and they put that colonial-looking doorway on the face of that. So that's one of the sort of upgrades, improvements from the 70s or 80s. It's hard to tell from the building card which application it was because it reads alteration or what have you. But that whole little narrow brick, that piece right there, that's all one of the newer. In other words, that would have been a porch, as Brian is showing it, but the porch was removed in order to build that.
And when we were there,
That's our
where
belief.
the front door, where the current front door is, and where you're leaving the front door, was originally just a wall, an
So, yeah,
unprotected wall?
If you look at this
Thanks.
massing,
Yeah, we
you can
think.
see this clean gable roof line, which I think the proportions actually look pretty nice. So this right here, if you could imagine this covered porch and this second story addition, the door is right here. It is still that wall right here, and see this roof line, this wall coming up.
Yep.
So that volume comes up to hit this gable, which is basically that. So I just added just imagine looking at this with a front porch wrapping around.
So the original front door, as Brian had said earlier, it's unusual, it faces north.
Yeah.
And so that is a little peculiar, that it doesn't have a street-facing entryway, but I think bringing up, and there would have been a porch of some sort, evidently it was removed when they did that alteration. That's our assessment of it.
This gable here is existing. I thought the actual original massing it looked actually pretty elegant and the massing made sense, so I tried to run with that with the new design.
Here's my comment. Right now, when you look at the house, even though I realize all these changes, there is a recognition from the street through an opening up a stairway that you go down under the porch to get to the front door. Right. Now, when we look at the house from the street, there's no actual recognition of where that you cannot define the front door of the house from the street. So I think you're doing a masterful job, and I think you listened a lot to what Sarah had to say, especially. I'm wondering about the wraparound porch and the fact that we no longer have the front door defined from the street. So if someone was to pull into the driveway, and how it would have looked, there's.
You know what would be helpful? To have this same type of drawing with the addition in red against the original house.
Is that a lot of work, Brian?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible with it.
Because I find the addition almost overwhelming to the original house, even with the roof line being,
Step back.
subservient, quote unquote.
That was one thing that originally when Sarah brought up how far back it goes, it's a little deceiving, but we're actually 15 feet back here and then another 20 feet back. So it is, I have setbacks showing from the front yard to this structure. When you look at it from the front, I could see the massing looking wide, but as Mark mentioned, I pushed this gable back as far as I possibly could. And I understand to kind of put it behind there makes sense, but the backyard is, because of this subdivision that was made, we have a pretty shallow backyard versus it originally having the pool in the front yard.
I'm glad you brought that up as well, because I think it's important to see the sight lines from the balcony into the neighboring properties as well. This is a sizable lot, but it's not an estate
I
lot.
knew you were gonna bring this up. Basically, I have setbacks, you're looking over 2 driveways for the south and also into someone's front yard, so originally I
can see that,
yeah,
yes.
I don't like doing, I know you're not a fan of putting porches for privacy, but, someone's driveway in a front yard, I don't think privacy I didn't think it was an issue where we put it.
Matters to me. I think it's important.
What was that?
I think it's important.
Oh.
And when you review,
Okay.
a question I have, is, when you review the original house, I'm sure it's not original, but under the gable, the front-facing gable, which was a sort of an odd triangle 2-pane window, I know you've gone back and put in a spider window.
That's
Was
the
it-
original window.
That's the original,
Yeah.
I just want to remember, was that
So what
weird
happened?
triangle thing was an over window in front of it? Is that what we figured out?
Yeah, so what happens is right now, if you were to look at the house, there's a screen window and a screen
And that's-
in
that's-
front of it.
that was the
And the
weird
actual
triangle
window's
we saw.
lower. Yeah, I have a picture of the inside that shows that actual, we're keeping the exact window that was.
Because I remember we talked about that when we were on site.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I have a document showing that.
So I have an additional comment,
Go
which,
ahead,
which may be in line with what you were saying. So I think the general design and character and appropriateness are good and commendable, which is one of the criteria in Chapter 65. And the texture and the materials and the color, I think those also are harmonious. The thing that I have issue with are the scale and the visual compatibility with the surrounding properties. Now, even though the addition is set back, I'm troubled, and I can't put together what Zach said at the onset, which is that, and I can't recall your exact words, but you wanted to make sure that you didn't go across the entire front. But at the same time, I see an addition that's in total with setbacks, despite all of that, at least laterally, twice the size of the existing house.
Right, and that's, that, I am stuck on this one rendering, page 14. When you enter the house now, or the driveway, the focus is this huge addition. It's no longer the original house, which I guess was the whole purpose of
Right.
this
And then,
deconstruction and reconstruction.
so, and then the addition that, on the west elevation to the right side facing, which is where all the addition is, the first 2/3 of that, or let's say maybe about 60% of that, is at the same roof line as the existing piece. So it's not, the addition really isn't as stepped down. I mean, yes, elements of it are stepped down, but not the whole thing. So I think it's not subservient in any way, I don't believe, despite the efforts to set it back. It's a house, it's essentially twice the existing facade. And there seems to be an opportunity for a clear break after the gable, the second gable that comes out, right side facing. Almost to the point where that last third of the house, or maybe quarter of a house, is almost, I wouldn't say gratuitous, it's not, because it's obviously designed with care, but it's a bit of an overkill in terms of scale.
Well, even the shed dormer addition adds to that, the massing of that section. It's,
Yeah,
I did take down dimensions just about the width, because when it's drawn out here and you're seeing a brand new house all continuous.
yeah,
The existing house or the current house, the width is roughly 67 feet 8 inches. And the proposed is roughly, it's 29 feet wider. Just to give you an idea of size. When you
Right. Unless I'm looking at something,
What drawing are you looking at? I just want to make sure, are you looking at the comparison one? Because I did a comparison where I highlighted.
yeah, okay, so,
That's a little bit better though.
okay, so let's take a look at that.
There's also something
Yeah.
else,
Yeah,
there's something else to
So-
consider.
what am I missing? The shaded area is X and the white area is 2X. Okay, I don't know if you can get that.
Oh, so basically from here to there, and this existing dimension was roughly 67.
But wait,
From the edge of this, all the way over was 67.
Could you speak into the microphone?
okay,
67 feet 8 inches.
yeah, but Brian, with all due respect,
Yeah.
that's in the width, you're measuring a piece here that is 12 feet above the ground versus one that's a roof height.
Oh,
So
it's
the-
definitely a two-story structure versus
Yeah.
one-story, but I just did the overall width from plan.
Yeah, I understand, but it's We're dealing with a three-dimensional structure here, not a two-dimensional drawing.
Yeah.
There's something else I think that's worth throwing in the mix of conversation, and it relates to the appearance when you're driving up to the house now, that there's no distinction between the historic part of the house and the new house, or the new addition. Someone could pass by and look at this thinking it's an entirely new construction. So that's something that we try to be very protective of, is having the addition being a bit distinctive in a way, separate from the historic portion of the property.
Could I just point out a couple of things? I don't want to
Sure.
prolong because you have a long agenda, and I'm sensitive to that as a problem, so I don't want to make this long. But I just want to put sort of on the record that what's being proposed in terms of that extended wing and then dropping down again is, I'm looking at the elevations, which I guess you're not really looking at there, is, it appears to me, at least 4 or perhaps more feet below the ridgeline of the existing historic house.
Yeah, we understand
So it's
that.
very, well, it's been said that that doesn't seem to be the case, and I'm simply pointing out that the ridgeline of what's being built new is at least 4 feet below, and the purpose for that is that it highlights the original historical house. One of the guidelines, the interior, is that if all that's being built new should be demolished and removed, it needs to be reversible. Not that any of us would ever imagine such a thing, but if that were the case, that original structure, having been revealed with the removal of these, additions, would be still standing. That would be the original house. So what is being proposed, economically, this is ridiculous, but the fact is, what's being proposed could be entirely removed and leave the original structure. That is a basic principle. I'm also want to suggest that while the ridgeline of that middle section that's being built new is a good 4 feet below the original, it then drops down again. It drops down about 1.5 to 2 as it progresses to the south, and then it drops all the way down to that open porch. So I believe that aesthetically this was the approach, to make that extension considerably lower to begin with and then have it drop down twice as it progresses to the south. And what you don't see in the elevation, which you do get a better idea of in that rendering, is that all of that is set somewhat between 15 to 20 feet back. So that has the effect of being subservient to the original historical building. And that's the driving kind of thing here, but
Okay.
enough from me.
All
Enough
right,
from me.
so maybe I'm misinterpreting the drawing, but I see a roof line here. This is the existing house. Okay, and now you build, this is all new right here, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so this roof line is extending here.
We extended, yes, so.
Yeah, so how is it that Zach, with all due respect, says it drops here? It drops down here.
No. So what's happening is you have the max building height, we have the current building height. It's 6'6" lower. This whole new addition in the front is 6'6" lower. This is the structure right here, which is all the way to the back of the. So if you look at this roof plan, this is probably about 30 feet back from the front of the house, which is an existing structure, which we just maintain that all the way in the back.
Okay,
And that's back like 35 feet. probably.
okay, all right, so this is
That's a
still,
flat roof line right there, which is lower by
Okay.
6'6", yes.
okay,
And then what Zach's saying is we maintained this here, say that's 4 feet lower. We maintained that roof line and just brought through, but then we dropped it down again to another 2, this is actually
Okay.
2 feet lower.
That may be the case, but to me, still, the massing of the addition kind of overcompensates, or it negates what
The
you're
challenge-
describing.
yeah, The challenge with this house, and we walked it, was pushing the actual structure. I have another project that I'm gonna be getting involved with that the lot goes straight back. And I'm thinking in my head, this is a home run for an historical review, because the structures can go straight back. With this property, I can't go back further.
well, but you're also,
can't.
you're
I
making
mean-
choices with what you do with is there a pool there now? I didn't walk the property in the rear. But, you're making choices with the back. Zach made a statement saying that you didn't want to go wide, and I guess you said you went far back as much as you
Back to the
could.
rear yard property, yeah, the rear
Yeah,
yard property.
but you can.
What?
You can.
No, I am right now, that's the problem.
But why do you say you're pushing it back as far as you can?
Because I need a variance to go back further.
The house?
Yeah, if you wanted me to, because I maintain the existing footprint of the house, so to go back further, technically I could go forward, because if you look at the setbacks, I could go forward, but that's not part of the regulation for the historical, review.
Wait, I'm-
So, if you look at, you gotta look at the, not this plan, look at the site plan shows like setbacks.
Here's where I think this is giving me trouble. Let's
Yeah.
talk about it. When you drive down South Main Street, now this house presents east-west in its orientation.
Mhm.
That's how it presents to the street. There's a central gable, then a protruding gable. When you look at it from the street, the door's on the left, the house presents east-west. Now you have actually oriented it to where the house presents north-south. And when you so its massing to the street is really double to this, it may not be double the square footage, but its width and its mass is double to the street. And now when you add this large deck to the right-hand side again, not only you have the massing looks even wider. So we've really reoriented the massing of this house to South Main Street significantly in how you've reoriented it. Because in the original house, the house oriented east-west, and the pool was to the north,
South.
to the
Yeah,
south.
it was all-
So
right.
you've moved instead of taking more space to the back and keeping its orientation, you've actually moved the pool to the back. And the house has gotten wider and a little bit, and it presents wider and narrower than its original occupation. Its original presentation. And then with the one thing for me that I'm having a hard time supporting is actually the wraparound porch with the pediment over the door. Because I think the quirk of this house it is right now is the opening access. It faces the street, which it no longer does. As a matter of fact, there's not even a way to walk up from the driveway to the front of the house, because now you've put it all the way around to the side facing the neighbor. So there's no actual access to this house that faces the street. And I think that's the part that I'm also seeing different than how the house presents today. That can probably be fixed with rethinking the porch, the stair location, and that part. And then I think, for me, the width and size and scale and mass of the patio accents even further the north-south orientation of this house, which just makes it even harder to find what was the original expression of the house to the street.
Exactly. There's nothing distinctive about the addition that would lead you to believe that the historic part of the house was historic, or original even.
I guess the scaling, for good or for bad, you're pretty much across the street from the Halsey house. Now, granted, I don't expect you to build a 17th century house, but on the other hand, when you juxtapose the scale of this across the lot versus the Halsey house across the street, and even the larger houses on how they sit on their properties, to your point, and how they face, I think you really need to look at the scaling of this. And to the extent that there are, and again, I'll spend some time with the building department, but to the extent you have opportunity to build in the rear, if you still need as much square footage, because I guess this is over the current allotment for, if this house were to be built now, you could not build the 7,600 square feet that you have, something like that, right? So, it's nice that you have that luxury, but maybe thinking of reducing the scale by reducing the square footage, it's an option to consider. Or if you want to build it to the rear, that's something you can consider. But right now, the scaling is disharmonious.
Let me ask you a question. When you were you able to pull off some of that unfortunate aluminum cladding that's currently on the house?
I pulled it off just off a little bit off the corner, and there is a painted wood
Okay.
shingle.
Because in the rather more simple presentation from what I see, where you built flare into the house and this board, the bridge board that goes all the way across here?
Yeah.
That frieze board?
Mhm.
Do you have is there any reference to that in the original structure? Is that all additional?
That's
Because
additional.
that feels to me a step too far in recreating the original house.
I was looking at just Queen Anne style architecture.
Right.
Trying to put it on
But when we look at what the original house was, there's no actual evidence that this house ever had that feature on it. So we've sort of contemporized it again.
this house has been altered, so
Right.
I don't know how
But we know that the original volume piece there, the piece when you yanked it.
This piece
You've
right
done a
here.
good job of I'm appreciating the architecture historian here, but when you pull the central original structure,
Mm-hmm.
you're adding details back onto your plan that were never part of the original structure. I think that's taking away sort of the historic presentation of the house as well.
Have we had an assessment on this house from our historian?
Yes, early on, one was done by Sally, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to break down the massing of,
Right.
trying to, by putting that band, I thought maybe it's
Right.
making it look too wide, but
Right.
I was trying to break down the height, that's why I put it in there.
Well, I would suggest we just think about that band, because I'm not sure it's representative of the original house. So for me, my issues would be if we can figure out how to reduce the massing, the orientation to the street a little bit. So to me, the balcony is a part of that problem, and I think the wraparound porch is not working with the pediment. So we had another project that had a pediment over the porch. It sort of didn't work for the same reason. It just feels unnecessary to me. But if we could think about that frieze detail that you have going center of the house that I don't think was original, I think it would clean it up a little bit. And I also think that when you add in the dormer, it adds a lot of visual weight.
Right here.
Yes, that adds a lot of visual weight that actually brings focus and attention to the addition away from the original structure. Do we have any comments from the public? Okay. So my friend, you would like, I'm assuming, to ask for an adjournment? Okay. And please take the comments in the spirit of which they're intended. I think you've done and are doing a good job figuring it, because I know it's a complicated problem that we saw when we went around the house, so I do appreciate how hard you're working. But I am going to move that we accept the applicant's request for adjournment for 242 South Main Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Our next meeting is March the 17th. Do you think you can be ready then?
March
Our next meeting
13th?
is March 17th, isn't it?
I think it's the
Okay.
13th.
Well, why don't we put you on for the 17th? If you're not, we'll just. adjourn
13th.
again. I'm sorry, 13th. My bad, 13th. We'll leave it there, and if you're not, we'll adjourn from there.
And Brian, in the meantime, we'll check the GFA calculations for the building inspector.
I'm sorry, what was that?
In the meantime, we'll check the GFA calculations with the building inspector.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. All right, thank you. All right. So now we're moving on to public hearings non-historic, and the first one, we previously adjourned 71 Hill Street, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so next up we have 64 Down East Lane LLC at 495 Ox Pasture Road for construction of a single-family dwelling. Is the applicant present? Yes. Okay. If you do me a favor and introduce yourself.
Sorry, yeah, I was just trying to get stuff. So my name is Tim Greening, representing Martin Architects, representing the client 64 Down East Lane. I believe we also have Nick Martin should be joining via Zoom. Okay, well,
Okay,
oh yeah, I'll get started.
if you want to sort of remind us where, and the public, where we were in the last meeting, and then go through what changes and
Sure.
that you've made for discussion. Thank you.
The last meeting, we had several comments regarding color, materiality, scale, and we've made several moves since the first meeting, which was on the 23rd of January, which was the original design. I mean, I don't know if we want to go back to that, but we can
No.
also go back to the previous.
Actually, if you can just take us from where we were in the last meeting
The
to
last
now, we
meeting.
don't have to go to about 2 meetings back.
Yeah, so generally, this is the previous design. This is the south elevation facing Ox Pasture Road. So this would also be that same south elevation. So previous design introduced metal roofing, fairly linear as far as the comments from the board. Issues with the wing walls to the west and east of the property.
Can you just mute yourself on there?
Yeah. I thought I was hearing. You got it? Thank you. Okay. So this is a site map of, a site plan, I'm still hearing the feedback.
Maybe just turn your volume off?
Yeah, it's down. I think that should be better. So representative of this diagram is the properties adjacent. One of the comments was proximity to the neighboring houses. Given last meeting, we had a second floor, open air kind of deck, terrace area on the west facade. So here we're just highlighting the distance to that neighbor to the west, plus also the fact that there's a tennis court and existing coniferous trees screening. There's screening on our property as well. And again, the distance to the east, about 120 feet to that east neighbor, as well as that neighbor being similar in size. And then also highlighting the distance of 500 and almost 50 feet to the south of the neighbor directly to the south. Again, proximity was an issue for some items last meeting. This planting plan indicates how we would introduce new plantings and elements as on top of what's existing. The darker green on the west here is existing, but we'd introduce coniferous and deciduous trees on the property to further block and I guess mitigate any kind of audio or visual connections between the two properties, given that was one of the, another major comment. Just on a secondary point to that matter, we did indicate some of the views on the last page, showing what the property currently looks like in terms of visual connections and sightlines to the properties on the west, the south, and the east. Again, this is what's already existing. A lot of these photos were actually taken in winter months, so all of this would actually gain in growth and density, but then we will be further enhancing that. That driveway will come out, so now we'll have further area for planting, again, to provide those breaks from the property to the neighbor.
Here's what I think would be very helpful. If you would go to your elevations
Yes,
and go through, because you've changed roofing material, you've changed fenestration
Yes.
patterns, you've changed a lot. If you could just take us through what those changes are for this versus last time,
absolutely.
and walk through what those choices are, that would be great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yes. So this is our new south elevation. Previously, we were introducing metal standing seam roof. What we've done here is introduce wood shake roofing to be more in line with the local context and neighboring properties and homes. We've also then reduced the height by introducing some flat roof areas to break the volume as it reads west to east along the street. Additionally, in several of the areas, we've introduced wood shake siding to bring that further in context with the local community.
I'm sorry, just, you said in some places, can you?
Sorry, yeah, so on this west setback here,
Mhm.
we've introduced shake in the middle. We've added some rain screen, but just as a breakup and a way of introducing new materials and dynamic to the facade there. Again, that piece is set back.
That's different than this.
Again, on this,
May I join the panel as well?
yeah, Nick, we're hearing you.
Hi
Yeah,
there.
we can hear you,
so,
Nick.
Martin, how is everyone on the ARB today?
Good.
The general large change is that we've now changed the materiality to, say, 80% shingles, the roofs and the majority of the siding. We have a few of the gable ends in clear cedar, which is indicative of older and newer types of architecture. And we've tried to create a level of texture in the facade by introducing different manners to which the materials are used, but there's a rhyme and reason to it. There's a formula that we've created, and we've reduced the mass and overall reduced the scale of the house.
Okay.
The window package also shows a reduction in glazing, and as you can see, the forms are a bit more typically traditional.
We've also introduced mullions and muntins, again, in the spirit of connecting with the local context and breaking up the volumes and
Great.
reducing that scale.
Now, can you take us to page A2.1 and take us through those changes? That would be the west and the east elevations?
Yes. So, as mentioned on this west facade that we're seeing, the foremost piece, again, is majority cedar shake. We've kept with clear cedar, but managed to change the orientation vertically and horizontally to break up the reading of the facades. But again, we're using clear cedar as a return to the materiality and connection. Here you can see further, as Nick was mentioning, the introduction of shake throughout on the roofing. Again, here you can see the difference in glazing. So we've reduced the amount of glazing and the sizing of the glazing on the west and east facades as well. Here's again an introduction of more shake on the foremost facade. with then introduction of our muntins and mullions on the east. Again, another depiction of how we're using shake throughout to really kind of stay with the idea of one materiality but used in various ways. And the purpose for that is to add, you know, dynamics to the facade and to the overall composition of the construction.
Okay.
So going to the next sheet, we're seeing our renderings here. You can see examples of our materials palette. As mentioned, we're having shake siding, and again, much of it being clear cedar, but used in various ways to break up the volumes. You can see the reduction in height in the flat roofed areas, as well as trying to minimize that fascia so that it doesn't seem so heavy and dense in terms of a volume in and of itself, although it is a flat roofed area.
I'm confused. Maybe I'm not looking at this the right way, but if you go to A 3.1,
Yes.
if you look at the portion of the house to the west of the entrance,
Yes.
on the top part, it's different from what you're showing
It might be,
on the
yeah,
bottom.
it might just be different than the elevation. Maybe it's just the wrong.
Well,
So
the
the
top
elevations
one's
are more correct in terms of, you're saying in the materiality.
Well, yeah, the shingle, it looks like you're using slats on the image on the lower part, but on the
Yeah.
upper part, you're using
So
shingles. which-
everything would be derived based on the elevations.
Got it.
Yes, so the shake is correct. This would be.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm
Yes.
looking at it the
Yeah,
right way.
no, yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
But I think John's right. If you look at 831, if you look at that's the front of the house. And if I look at on the prow in the front, the angle prow, if you look at the cladding, it is horizontal. Whereas if I look at the rendering on the cover page, it's vertical.
Yes, there was a disconnect with the rendering in
Okay.
terms of its time, because of, you know, we have such a short period.
I know, I understand.
Like,
Which you,
So
which
which
you
is
actually,
correct- which
which
is
you
correct
actually,
is-
which you actually
yeah,
presented.
It's the shingle.
The elevations rule over the rendering.
Okay.
Right, so the elevations as shown on the cover page, the horizontal slatting would be the direction.
Okay.
Apologies for the confusion.
Look, I realize you've done a lot of work in a short period of time, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, just want to make sure I'm looking at things the right way.
No,
that's all.
absolutely, absolutely.
Where are you finding the discrepancy between this?
Here versus the other page was on. But the drawings overrule the renderings anyway, so we're just looking for consistency. All right. Yeah, well, yeah. Well, that's actually around the corner. You can't see it there.
Okay,
That's
that's
that corner. You can't see it that rendering.
All right, all good.
All right.
So similarly, in the rear elevation, the north elevation, we have introduced cedar shake both on the roofing material and on the facade material in that main volume. We've kept some of the slatting for again a distinction between the flat roofed areas and the gabled areas. Additionally, we've also reduced the height, and it's something that you can see in the elevations. We've reduced the height of that central prow gable to then further reduce the scale and bring it back down slightly.
Great.
And the rest of the sheets are just indications of the local adjacent context and
Some of the
supporting materials, so.
Okay.
We can go
Did-
through
did
those
you
if you'd
review
like,
the
but
masking?
No, we don't need, I don't think we need to go through all the
Okay.
photographs. We
Why
know
don't-
that,
why
we
don't
know
you
the
just
neighborhood.
I think-
look through the massing images.
I'm sorry?
There's a series of, there was a comment in the last meeting that the house seemed large in scale and mass. I think we've shown here that we've not only reduced it from even its original state in the existing house, but also within the street, there's, you know, a dozen examples of larger, more massive, larger scale houses, you know, within walking distance. So these are just some examples of those.
Okay, thank you.
Higher scale, larger facades, wider, longer, taller.
All right, board members.
I think it's a definitely a move in the right direction. Changing the standing seam roof really made a definite improvement. The detail on the windows, I think, is a move in the right direction. There's the one thing that stands out to me though is the entrance, the glass. It's almost like you're building it. It's almost commercial in some way. That there's a big atrium when you walk into the, you know, the front door, you know, looking all the way out into the back of the house. It doesn't seem residential. And that combined with, I know it's kind of like you put these, like, all these parking spaces in the front drive, which even makes it look more commercial to me somehow. I wish there was a different way to address the parking than what you've done here, but somehow that just lends itself to the idea of this is, you know, it looking a little less residential, a little more commercial from that standpoint.
Yeah, again, that's something that we'll be trying to address through screening.
How many
And,
bedrooms
I
are in this
mean-
house?
I'm sorry,
How many bedrooms are in the house?
11, 12,
Okay.
based on, some flex rooms, so technically they
So you
count.
do need a parking lot then.
Right, so it's, yeah.
Yeah, so there's 2, 4, yeah, they do.
If I could answer a few of the comments.
Why don't we wait till we're all finished with our comments and then
Okay.
you can.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Let us give them all to you at once, and then we can go back. Jeff?
Yeah, so, yes, congrats and appreciation for listening to us and moving towards a use of materials and change in dimensions such that the scaling seems to be better, the compatibility to the neighborhood seems to be better. But I will echo what John was saying. The two big windows, or basically the whole glass gabled front. I understand its use and it could work well. I'm not sure if it does in this area. And then John brought up a good point with the so much parking in the front. I think it lends itself to that. And I think if one were more creative, I'm trying to think of, and I was passing by the house on Toilsome. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It's a contemporary house, or sort of transitional house.
It's a transitional, yes.
Yes, and there's a fair amount of windows up front, but somehow they've broken that up in a way that it doesn't leave me with this same impression of just, as you say, and for lack of a better word, and I truly mean that, more of a commercial look than a residential look. And then again, you do add the driveway, and perhaps, I know you talk about screening, but to me that's always, oxymoron isn't the right word, but you go through all this effort to design a house and then you talk about screening. I'd rather see a more creative use of landscaping that works into the needs for parking, but does so in a way that you don't create this parking lot in front. And is there a way to be more creative with the window over the doorway, or the doorway itself? Maybe there is. I don't know. But all I can tell you is that it presents very, very much like John was saying.
My comments would be, first of all, thank you for listening. I think we've reached a point now of our materials and presentation because this is a hard street because we're on the non-historic side of a street that is historic on the other side of the street. So we have to take the neighborhood into consideration as well for how it sits in harmony with its neighbors. I think you've brought it into a language and a materials palette that is compatible with Southampton. It's great. I think sort of the gaping maw look-through of the center of the house is not. The off-center front door, I think, and the amount of light issues of that, I just don't feel Southampton. So I think we've reached a place where I feel like we're close. I think you just need to rethink this whole entryway, big open glass see-through house part. You know, we have a few houses that do this, but most of the houses that do this tend to be on meadow. So you tend to look through the house and see like the ocean and beyond. And I think, you know, the lack of privacy, interior privacy also that it presents is odd for houses, how houses, even modern houses, present in Southampton on streets, especially where this house is located. So I think for scale, for massing, I think you've done a very nice job of bringing it into where it's great. I think that what you've heard from all of us now is the one thing to rethink is this massive glass facade to the street from the front door. So we're down to that, and that seems to be the big issue. I agree. I mean, I realize one of the reasons you have all the cars there is because the code requires it. How often you'll ever actually have that many cars, I don't know, but if you've got that many bedrooms, it's entirely possible. But the one thing I would ask you to think about then is the entryway, and I think we've come a very long way because I think it sits other than that central area. I like the fact that you've kept the angles in. I like the fact that you've got some of the broken facades. I think that's great, except for let's just fix that one issue, and then I think we'll be very close.
Okay. I guess just my comment on that is, again, that's an ask of the owner because they've spent time there, and one of the major concerns is even, with some of the glazing there, is that it's not a lot of light, even on the south side, on the south facing. So yeah, we've been inside and it's actually
That sounds to me like an architect's problem, but go ahead.
No, but that's so one of the items and ways of trying to solve this was bringing this
Right.
This amount of glass. Now, again, we tried to place muntins and mullions.
Well,
It doesn't break
you've
open.
got.
It's proportion, I think, is.
But
Yeah,
I think
I also
the other
think like
thing-
if you drove by this house at night, and we're driving down the street, what I'm going to see is a great big, huge, bright, big white, just light box staring at the street with this much glass facing the street and that entrance unbroken. Is that
I mean, it
is
is
that
set-
2-story or is that a double entry height?
It's a double height entry.
So that even more, you're gonna have all that light just pouring out. I think that is incompatible with the neighborhood. The rest of the house is working for me. That feature, I think, is incompatible to the neighborhood. And I think that's sort of what you're hearing from
And
all
that's
the board members.
Pretty good considering where we started with
Yeah.
this, yeah, so.
No, I think you've listened well. I think,
Yeah.
finding a way to do a more contemporary house in a neighborhood I know can be hard, and I think you're doing a very admirable job if we can just solve this one issue.
Okay, yeah, I believe Nick had some.
Now, do we have any
some
public comments? Anybody?
Nick, did you
I
want
just
to
had a-
mention anything before the
Yeah,
public?
thank you for your comments. I just wonder if there's a way for a partial acceptance, or would you need a full, another application?
We have to have, it has to be full. We can't do partial.
We can't do written based on some changes.
No, we would need to see it. So I guess you're asking for an adjournment to the next meeting.
I guess that's the
Okay.
case, unfortunately.
Okay. So I am going to move that we accept the applicant's request for adjournment to the meeting on March 13th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. But sincerely hear us when we say thank you for as far as you've come and for really listening.
Appreciate
We
it.
do appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you. Okay, let me get my bearings.
You're welcome to reach out to the building department if there's an opportunity to minimize the number of parking spaces required. There is some stacking that is permitted.
Okay,
Oh, great.
All right, that's
thank you
good
very
to
much.
know. Thank
Yeah.
you. All right, where am I?
Well, there's so many adjournments on
All right.
the next page.
I highlighted them.
Okay. So the next applicant is Kevin Bone at 25 Willow Street for addition to existing wood frame dwelling and garden shed. Is the applicant here?
The applicant is here. Hi.
Hello.
Everyone.
Okay, take us through the updates and where we left off, and introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, members of the Architectural Review Board. Thank you very much for hearing our application again here. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my screen, if you can give me permissions to share this screen. Okay, how are we doing? Is that screen visible to you all?
Yes,
sir, it is. Thank you.
All right, so here we are with the site plan and the basic survey. A couple of minor adjustments, primarily conversations with David at the building department about parking. So we are making an application for some parking that we will accommodate via geo-block at the northeast corner at the northwest, at the northwest corner of the property on Dale Street. So that is now shown on the site plan. I guess as a matter of compliance, once we requested the addition of a fourth bedroom, we theoretically, or not theoretically, we were obligated to have parking for 3 vehicles. And even though we have traditionally parked 3 vehicles in the existing driveway, the stacking it was suggested that the stacking could be a problem, so we thought we would try to address this in advance and propose how we would do that. The next image is a kind of quick scale model that we put together as a response to the critique from the first application. Primarily what we have done is to remove the gable roof from the proposed addition. And I have to say to the Architectural Review Board, I'm actually happy about that suggestion. For
See,
me,
that happens sometimes.
For me, the strategy of this architecturally was that there was the historic element and that there were the new kind of more elemental geometric figures that represented the addition, and that included the little cubic figure we did on the north side of the house that was previously approved, and this addition. So, you know, after a first sort of typical kind of architect's frustration at the setback, I thought, you know, I've got to listen to all of this because it's interesting. So,
Thank you.
So more or less what I have shown here is that, you know, the other thing that the flat roof gives us, because I am very interested and I think it's very important for all of us to see how we can accommodate solar energy on these projects in a way that's architecturally sympathetic. So by having a flat roof, we can move the solar panels back to the north side and they're really not even visible from the street. And then we're proposing a little bit of a green roof up there and possibly a little sun deck there that might be ultimately accessed from a little door out of the upper window of where there's existing window in the existing house. We put together a little Photoshop. It's slightly primitive here, but it more or less shows the relationship of the addition to the existing house here. I would say the elevation is a little more accurate in that it has a few details on it. It shows a leader and a kind of gutter head box here. But it does show the hyphen, the idea that the addition is a distinct element. There's a connection, so we have the historic condition, the linkage, and the proposed addition. The primary sections and elevations, the upper left is the west elevation. We brought that down, so all of this, the roof line of the main house is now quite visible. This is the previous addition. This little piece here is the proposed garden shed. This is the courtyard elevation, cross-section, and the longitudinal section there. Some basic construction details, which are, you know, clearly in progress, but in terms of materials, let me just go back here. The material palette is as initially proposed. There is some, you know, basic 6/1 windows to match existing on the existing house, actually matching the existing in size, so a little bit of the genetics is clear there. What the rendering doesn't show is some of the copper detailing, which I've traditionally used on the house. All of my gutters, leaders, and flashing and fascia details are done in architectural copper. So the palette is fairly simple, and I would say that the Photoshop that my fellow Lynn did here doesn't really properly estimate the height of this crawling hydrangea here, which is done magnificently well, and we're very happy with. Yeah, so that's some, you know, basically red cedar shingles, a little bit of copper trim. This is the existing fieldstone wall that we're building off of. And a few additional context photos. I modified some of the context photos so you can see a little bit more how heavily vegetated this front yard is that we're building behind. You can also see this view shows that from the west looking to the house that there is, this photograph is taken behind the privet hedges, so there's several layers of screening that exist between us and the streets there. This also gives you an idea of the existing vegetation that we are preserving and proposing to build behind. Yes, would you like me to take you back to any particular photograph here? There are only 7 drawings in this set.
I'm going to turn it over to the board members for questions.
None for me, I'm good.
I just have a few questions. I thank you very much for listening to us last week. I think this is an interesting change. I'm just wondering, and maybe it doesn't come through on the rendering on A201, is there any freeze board or anything on the addition? It's, or maybe, I don't know, it's very,
Stark?
yeah, stark. Maybe that's and maybe matching a little bit more of the detail on the house might add a little element of consistency, I guess. I don't.
Are we talking about a fascia and some sort of overhanging roof?
No. Just under the.
Is there a freeze board that goes across the top? You see where your leader is on the bottom of 201. It doesn't actually show in the rendering. You see
Yeah.
where your leader is?
Yeah.
You seem to have more your south elevation seems to have more detail than the actual rendering.
Yes, that is because I did this very quickly.
Oh.
Okay.
You know, the other thing I would like to do is to develop a little bit of a projected cedar awning above these windows, which I didn't get to show here. It was just really a matter of time in my
Yeah.
office. And
That would make a difference.
They're actually
I think that'll be helpful.
Yeah, they're actually on the elevation. They're
Oh, they
just not
are.
on the rendering.
They are.
They're on the drawn elevation, but they're
Right.
not on the
Okay.
Photoshop.
Okay.
But I actually think those are very helpful because
Yeah,
they break
that does
up
help.
what looks like the world's. It could look like an accessory building, and I think you tie them back by adding those.
Yeah, I like that.
Here's where
Let me just see if they show up. Yeah, they didn't get put into the detail page.
But here's where I need some help. On page 2, the top sheet of your submission. No, the next page.
The model photograph?
Yeah. So what is Okay, first of all, in this, the bank of windows seems to be facing north. And on your drawings, the opening of those windows on the roof of the extension, which way are those windows facing? Because in this, they face one way, and in the drawings, it looks like they face the other.
No, this is, can you see my cursor?
Yep.
Yeah,
No, no,
that is-
not those.
that-
There's a raised section of the roof that looks like you have skylights.
Here,
Yes.
Yes.
Which way do those
So-
windows face?
that is the photovoltaic array, and there is a tiny clear story detail
Yep.
that's underneath that.
Yes, but which
Okay.
way is it facing?
It is facing north.
Okay.
Detail at the north soffit at the window head there, so
So the
there are
panels,
the
the solar
proposed
panels.
photovoltaics, there's the proposed green roof, and this is just a little light element to serve
Okay,
as
so,
yeah.
so when I look at page A201, first of all, in the middle of that, is that a chimney?
Yes. that is
Okay,
it,
so
yes.
behind the chimney, what I'm seeing, am I seeing roof or am I seeing window?
You're seeing roof.
Okay, because you're,
That little slope
like one.
piece
Those are the
there
panels, the solar panels, right?
those are
is
solar
where-
panels.
Yeah, so the solar panels are kind of integrated with a little kick up in the roof that I tried to utilize to create a little clear story there.
Okay. So that had me confused.
Yeah,
All
because
right.
you can see it then
And
on
then
the.
going back to page 2, what is you seem to have, how many accessory structures do you have here? There's a workshop shed that's 105 square feet.
Okay,
There's an
So in
existing
terms
shed,
of
but then
accessory
there seems to
structures.
be another building.
this is existing,
Yep,
this is existing,
okay,
this is the little gardener shed. Actually, on this model photograph, my apologies to the board, in this model photograph, this is shown in a different position than it's shown here.
that is my
There's
question.
that
Doc.
little tiny
That's my
tower
confusion.
element. Yeah, and this is, so here is my first addition that I put on the north side. Here is the proposed addition, and here is this proposal for a little workshop.
Okay,
So that model needs to be corrected.
okay. So, here's sort of my take on the whole thing. I think, I think the way you've hyphened this extension onto the house makes sense given architecture to the house. I think your materials don't really, all the materials we have to look at need to be adjusted a little bit so they're all together, so they all match. Because, in page 2 doesn't really match what's on the site plan. And I think I just need to understand from the rendering versus the elevation on 2, what that actual detail looks like. Because I actually think the detail that you have in your elevation is great. It's just not reflected in the rendering.
There's one other thing that I
Yeah.
think, the sun deck that you're showing on the plan is, what's the access look like to that sun deck? Is it something that would require,
Is there a
building?
stairway?
Yeah, it might be worth just removing that for the purposes of,
If the purposes of approval by this architectural review board required me to remove that little sun deck element there and remove that note from my drawing that said, my proposal was to take one of these windows, that's kind of the sort of larger bedroom in the upstairs, and have a little tiny bit of outdoor access.
well, I totally understand that. It's
But what would
the
the
access
what
and
would
the,
Where's the deck?
Where is the deck?
Let's try.
Okay, let me see if I
Because
can-
so you'd go out the door, across the hyphen and up to the deck?
Yes,
I just
so
said,
here,
what's the
there's sort of a step shown.
I honestly have to tell you, as close as you are to the street with the extension, I think from a sun deck standpoint, that's probably not something you'd find favor for.
yeah.
You know what, I don't want to, as the cliche says, fall on a sword for this little sun deck.
Okay,
All right, you know, it seemed like something that could be nice. I do wanna put a green roof on it. It seems like
That's
this is the
interesting idea.
21st century. And, you know, we do have a green roof on that other element I added, and it's wonderful to look out the window, and it's full of nesting birds and everything else. It's just,
Okay.
so the sun deck,
Okay,
I'm happy to remove the sun deck.
okay.
I realize from hearing the last presentation that maybe I can't remove the sun deck without coming back for another hearing.
Well, I think you're gonna have to come back anyway, just because your materials all do need to match, and right now we have models, we have surveys that don't match renderings, we have renderings that don't match elevations, so I think we're gonna have to all bring them together to match anyway. So, which is great, but before we finish here, let me do this and ask if there's any comments from the public.
While we wait for public comment, we would also want to see the gross floor area shown. I see where it says lot coverage on the site plan. And if the existing driveway is being removed, that should be noted on the plan.
I believe that the gross floor area, total gross area, 2,649 square feet.
Okay, yeah, it would be helpful to show the maximum and how that's being calculated. They don't see the formula there, I just see lot coverage.
Well, my understanding from talking to David, that the total and maybe this is my understanding of the regulatory environment, and my apologies, is that the gross area was not a ratio, but was rather just a maximum limit, and the limit he suggested was far greater than what's being proposed here.
No, it is based on the lot size.
All right, so
All right, so
because
then-
that's not an ARB issue, and I'm gonna ask that you reach out to the building department and ask, put whatever Alex is asking for and submit it in the next submission. From our standpoint, if you could just take a look at losing that deck and then bringing all your materials together to where we're looking at for the survey, and besides that, you have to update, I think, for the parking plan anyway. So I think if you can pull that together with the building department and take your renderings versus the elevations and just match them all up, I think we're in a very close place.
Just to be clear about your guidance here.
Sure.
Because I would like to get this next time.
I'm sure.
Okay. I'm gonna delete the sun deck, so we don't have to question that. I'm gonna make the model photographs and the position of the proposed little garden shed align.
Right.
What was the point about the driveway?
Is it being removed?
Didn't you, Alex, don't you need something? There was a question about the driveway, but that's between you and the building department?
Well, only because it's shown on the plans. I just wanted to clarify, is the existing driveway being removed?
No, existing driveway exists here. This is supplemental parking so that I could accommodate 2 other vehicles, because once the additional bedroom was added, we theoretically had to park 3
Yeah.
vehicles. And the way we park 3 vehicles is via stacking.
Right. Well, what I would suggest is that if you're retaining the existing driveway, you can show that as an existing parking spaces and stack 2 driveways in the new parking area. That parking area you're showing may be excessive.
If I showed 3 cars parked in my existing driveway, it might be accepted?
1 car in the existing driveway and only 2 cars in the new driveway.
And
Well,
they
that's
can't
how
be
I have
tagged.
it. That's
All
my
right,
intent.
because that is not an ARB issue, I'm gonna ask you to reach out to the building department, because that's usually something that's satisfied before it comes here. So I'm gonna ask you to reach out and talk to Alex in the building department and figure out what the parking needs to be and make sure it's updated on the survey, and they've signed off in the village before we look at the next drawings. But
All right,
from
let
our
me
standpoint,
do-
and the other thing that you did say that if it's something you intend to do, we would need to know, is when you said you were thinking about putting a green roof on the house, just let us know what that means and looks like.
Okay.
And if
Uh,
it includes a
To be
goat.
clear, one more thing, when you say to update it on the survey, does that mean that I would have to have a new survey done of where I propose the driveway to go?
Alex?
Wouldn't I do that after the driveway
Yeah.
is complete?
Yeah, to get a CMO,
No,
you
I
have to have a
think
new
they're just
survey.
asking that you show it as you've done here in red.
Yes. Yes, most of the applications we see have little cars drawn on them to show where they would be parked. So when the building department looks at it before it comes to us, they see that it meets village code for the amount of parking spaces. So you can work that with Alex. You don't have to get a new survey, but you do have to indicate on what you've presented where the cars would be to make sure that they meet code.
All right, so in effect, you're saying diagram 3 cars on this survey
Yes,
plan. and make a
Yeah.
note.
In effect,
4
I'm
bedrooms, 3
saying
cars.
reach out to Alex and ask him what he needs and put that together and then make the changes we've asked for from our standpoint from the ARB, and then by next meeting, we should be good.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I assume you're asking for an adjournment.
Yes?
So I'm going to move that we accept the applicant's request for adjournment for 25 Willow Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And when would that adjournment be for?
The next meeting is March the 13th.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. All right, so next up, where am I? Am I lost?
Number 4, Leonard.
Oh, yes, the request for adjournment, did we adjourn that last time? No,
No.
we did not. Okay, so I move we accept the applicant's request at 125 Burnett Street to be adjourned until March 13th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next up, 60 Pulaski Street, which has also been asked to adjourn. I move that we accept the applicant for 60 Pulaski Street, Paul Andrews' request for adjournment to March 13th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next up then is 52 Rogers Street for the demolition of existing house and construction of a new story residence. Hello?
I am James McChesney, the architect for 52 Rogers Street.
I'm sorry, just give me one sec to find the file. Okay, sir.
I think I can share my screen. Okay, so I brought some pictures of the existing house. I think at the last meeting, there weren't any changes to the design of the house. There was talk about, and I did change the driveway plan and got rid of the parking in the front,
Okay.
and that is, sorry, oh, share. So if you look at the site plan, there's a little patio area in front of the front door, rather than a parking area. And that was really the only change that was made, and I think that you were gonna go and see the house, to determine if we can knock it down.
Yes. Okay.
And I have pictures of the house.
Yes, that is correct. I think what we're looking for was the change of the front of the house, which I think is fine. And I do need to get, the other person that's on the demo committee is not here tonight, but we did go by and look at the house, so.
Okay,
So I think we can rule tonight, we can motion tonight on the house,
okay,
and then I'm gonna set the demolition aside, and I need a letter, or I need actually a comment or a letter from
I
Claire,
see,
and she's not here
okay,
tonight.
but we can
Well,
approve the house?
we
or-
can. Let me see if my board members have any questions.
No.
Looks good.
John? No, I think you did what we asked. Are there any questions from the public? Okay, so then keep me honest here. I'm going to move that we accept the applicant's proposed house for 52 Roger Street pending the receipt. How do I do this about it?
On the
On the condition that
condition,
he receives a demolition
Yeah.
permit.
So, but what do we have to do? You're just waiting
You
for?
have to-
we're gonna finish our motion first.
We'll finish our motion first and then I'll tell you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So the house is approved, but I'll come back to you separately on that demolition permit.
Okay,
Yeah, through the building department.
through the building
Yeah.
department, okay.
Okay.
It's just
So
the
you'll
appro-
receive it, and then you'll have your official.
Just the final
Okay, but
approval.
you have gone and looked at
Yeah,
that?
oh, yeah,
Okay,
we have.
great, Thank
My
you.
other demo committee and I, remember, we looked at it together, so we have looked at it.
okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so next up is 18 South Roscoe Drive for the demolition of existing residence and construction of a two-story single-family dwelling. Dimitri Kess.
Yeah, it's Casares, I don't know why
Yes, sir.
it's
Oh,
abbreviated.
sorry, Caceres, I
Yeah.
apologize.
Okay, yeah, so my name is Todd Nagy, and it's Todd Nagy Architect PLLC. Sure it's-
Give me one sec just to pull you. You've got lots of paper in this one, hang on. Okay, thank you.
So,
Great.
yeah, we propose to demolish an existing single-family residence and propose a new single-family residence. And I heard today that we did get the approval. It's not before this board, it's the demolition committee, but they did approve the demolition.
Yes, we
So,
did.
Yeah, so I thank you last time for your comments because we incorporated all of them. And there's one that we'd like to have your consideration on.
Okay.
But I will walk you through, first, a brief synopsis is that this is a two-story shingle style home. And these are just plans which, so you can see here, gables, cedar sidewalls and cedar roof, red cedar roof. These sidewalls are a light gray stain. Marvin windows they're in white. And, there's a detached garage at the rear of the property. And the details are unchanged from last time, other than removing the flares from the roof. Simple detail. So I want to walk you through the changes themselves.
Please.
One is the garage doors, which last time we had metal and glass, and we were talking about light pollution. So we changed those to traditional doors, panel doors with 3/4 of them, the 3/4 at the bottom are solid panel and the top is glass. We can tint the glass if light pollution is still an issue, but those are pretty typical traditional doors.
Okay.
And I also removed the base flares from the garage, this small curves at the bottom. That was one of the changes. Another is, at the rear of the house, we had glass doors. Actually, we had no window lights, any grills on the back of the house, because I was trying to match the doors. So I've added grills to the rear doors as well as the windows on the second floor and the kitchen window. So it's more cohesive with the rest of the house. You know, the probably toughest pill to swallow for me was the removing the flares. But I actually like the look of it. I understand where you're coming from with it. And I think it does simplify the house. I actually like the rear elevation better without them. And the front elevation, I like the way it looks now, so,
So you're the third one tonight that said thank you, so thank you.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
the process works.
Yeah, it does. And I understand where you're coming from with it, so you don't get a lot of resistance from me with that. The stone we changed to brick, it's a linear brick, and we like to do it in like a medium gray color, like the entire color scheme to be grays, and any splash of color would come from landscaping rather than from the house itself. So if we have light cedar shingled sidewalls, blue stone, which is a slightly darker gray, and then the roof would be natural cedar left to weather, which would be slightly darker gray, and then the brick, which is even darker gray, and then you have the white AZEK trim, and the windows during the day appear black. So that entire, from white to black, we have all the gray shades in between, and then splashes of color from beach grasses and, you know, cat and things like that, so pretty cool. He's adding blue stone, so that's basically the color scheme. I have samples if you want to see any of it. I have them last time too. As far as the other change, the one change that we want to ask your consideration on is parking. So we have this little parking area in the front, which is really a turnaround, because I think the way this house would actually be used, as most of them, is that people don't really use the front door. If you see on the floor plan where my cursor is, there's a mudroom on the side, So you probably pull up, you enter the mudroom and go right into the kitchen. That would be your typical path of least resistance to your kitchen. So if you look at the site plan, the way that works is that the cars would most likely park in this area. Right? But I think it's important to have the turnaround in the front, so I just want to walk you through that, why we're asking the consideration for that. Let me see, how can we do this? Okay. So if I put this on full screen. So what I did is I drove through the community, and first I'd like to preface this by saying that the community, Roscoe community, there's no thoroughfare to the ocean, beaches, or to ox pasture. It's kind of its own ecosystem, and maybe more family-friendly in some ways than other parts of the village, because you've got half-acre lots so that, you know, children can walk to their friends' houses. There's a little park in there, and a lot less traffic probably than some of the shortcuts that we all use. So to that end, you've got pretty much front parking on these half-acre lots in almost every house. So on South Roscoe Drive itself, there's 11 houses, and 100% of them have parking in the front. If you look at the broader community, I counted about 68, 69 houses. Over 50 of them had parking in the front or a circular driveway. This house is actually right across the street, a little bit to the south. It's just a little turnout in the front. Circular driveway, circular driveway, circular driveway, parking in the front. Usually no cars,
I think we get it.
yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
But the point is that where you don't have parking in the front, you have parking on the side, which is actually, in some cases, more visible because you have, you know, corner lot where people's cars are on the side. But the second reason that we really would like your consideration for that little turnout is that there was an incident in Sagaponack last summer, which prompted the village to create a rule where you have to be able to turn around and pull out the front way. You can't back out, or you can have a spotter in the street to watch for traffic. That was limited to construction sites, but it just highlights the safety implications of not having any way to turn around.
I hear you, but that's not Southampton code, village code?
No, Village Sagaponack.
Yeah, that's not Southampton village code,
No.
right,
No,
okay.
I don't think so, not to my knowledge, but
Well, why don't we start here? Why don't we talk about the house and the change, thank you, the change you've made to the house, and then we'll talk about the parking for a second.
Yeah.
John? Jack? In no particular order.
Go with John first.
John?
I mean, my only hesitation is the volume of glass on the back of the house. And I'm not sure if I can't believe I didn't say that last time. I would be surprised. It's just that, especially in the center, that, I mean, it's a huge, you know, amount of glass from what's the patio all the way to that would be the north elevation of the house. It just seems excessive. And the balcony as well, you know, that's my typical issue, just from a privacy standpoint. But the glass on the balcony is with the windows above the patio doors and the 4 patio doors and 2 next to that, it's like, there's just a lot of glass. And that's it. I think everything else, it's a much more attractive house without all the flares. I think that was really a distraction, but you know, I think that was a great move as well.
Jeff?
Yeah, it's amazing what the elimination of the rake or flare does to the facade of the house. The front porch, what's the material on? Because wasn't that an issue the last time?
last time it was stone, and we've changed that to a brick.
It's a brick, it's
A
gray
brick,
brick,
yeah,
right?
Dark gray, but it's a linear brick.
Stacked brick, that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, stacked brick. Right, a veneer. Same with the chimney.
All right.
Yeah,
See,
for-
does the, I don't know, the porch over the front door, does that seem a little bit large?
Oh. that's the
Proportionately?
Proportion.
Or does it work, if it works visually for you, it's okay?
It worked for me.
What do you guys think?
Doesn't bother me.
Okay.
With the gable end dying into the roof that way, it doesn't bother me that much.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep,
No.
yeah.
Okay, so, well, first of all, thank you, because I think you did listen, and here, took our comments to heart. I think we've reduced the visual massing of the house to the street in a way that's more harmonious to the neighborhood. I think the detail now over the window treatment now under the left gable actually is harmonious to the right, and I think the fact that they don't match actually helps the house a lot. I think, to John's question, is that a double height room over where all those windows are? What's the interior? I know the interior is not our business, but from a light perspective, is that a double height room in there? So is that light coming from a big vaulted open room in there?
It's not quite double height though, because the village code limits you to a 7/12 pitch,
Okay.
and then a flat roof is limited to 5% of the total roof area. So it's what we could do from the front of the house to the back of the house when you had to roof that. It's about, I believe it's 11.5 feet ceiling height for the back room.
Okay.
But I do want to mention about the landscaping plan. I mean,
Well, here's what I think. I just think the proportion dimension of the four-gang that's over the peplum roof, that's over the four sliders in the back, seems a little heavy.
Excessive.
So I think if you just could figure out a glazing situation right there that's a little more maybe you lower those windows down, take the roof away, take a little less glass. But I think you got, and I realize you're protected, what you created for yourself is protected opening, which is nice for the owner. But just think about that, because I think it's the one place that's a little disharmonious to the rest of the house right now. But other than that, having walked the property yesterday, I think from the sight lines that I saw, I did not walk it yesterday, I walked it before I left, so I must have walked it Wednesday. The balcony is off the master bedroom, correct?
yes, second floor primary
When I looked at the
bedroom.
photos, okay.
And that's why I wanted to bring up the landscaping plan too.
Yeah.
I forgot to show that.
Then my only other, for me, the turnout, I don't, in this case, have an issue with the turnout. Because what it does in this neighborhood is it pulls guest parking off the street and puts them on the property. Because most of those turnouts, when I drive down, are not used by owners. They tend to be guest parking. And I think it's consistent, in this case, I think it's consistent to the neighborhood. What's the width of it? You're 31 off, so that's good for a turn. And what's your depth?
I'm sorry.
You're 19 feet off the street, and then how wide is that parking pad? It's nominally 30 by 30?
Wait, you're in the front yard? It's,
Yeah, in your turnout here.
Yeah, 20 by 20. Oh, no, that's in the backyard. That's the garage.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
What's your dimension of that?
Oh, 20 by 20.
20 by 20?
So it doesn't even,
Yeah, so it'll park two guest cars, but to me, in this, especially having drive through the neighborhood, to me, it keeps guest cars off the street in that neighborhood. So those would be my comments.
Yeah, and actually, the landscape architect, he, when I told him that it's not favorable to have the turnaround in the front, he went from 3-foot high boxwoods in the front to 4 to 5 foot osmanthus. So it'd be some screening.
well, typically, I think the issue with the turnaround is that in many cases, it overtakes the entire front of the house. In this case, it's kind of off to the side, which makes it less of an issue.
Well, I think the new septic systems are so large that it's a blessing in disguise. People
Yeah.
can't pave the whole front yard.
So at this point, do I have any comments from the public? Correct me if I'm wrong here, board members, but I think what I'm hearing is the board members are fine with your turnout. They're fine with your landscape plan. They would just like you to rethink what your lighting exposure is in this section of the house. I think the lights in the garage are fine. On the garage doors, they're fine. Any other comments, John?
No, that's,
Balcony.
Balcony?
I think yeah, I think the windows over the balcony combined with all the windows in the center of the house create a light pollution issue as
Okay.
well as a privacy issue, but.
All right, so to that, I would ask you to just look at the dimensions, the glass dimensions that you have over that balcony. Are you okay with the size and depth of that balcony?
I think it's large for what it is, but it's off the bedroom, which I think makes it less of an issue. But it's, these are not huge lots.
If you would think about pulling it from 14 to maybe 11 or 12, that would make people really happy.
Okay, I'll look into that. I also want to show you the landscape plan where the landscape architect, he took your comment to heart, and if you can see the green trees along on the bottom there, he made those 10 to 12s. There, but they start out that way, and then they're gonna be
Yeah.
16 to 20.
So you're gonna ring this whole thing with arborvitae? Is that what that is?
That's a
Well,
shame.
There are,
Yeah, of course they are.
yeah, but that's deer fenced. I mean, deer sprayed.
Okay. All right, so you've heard the comments. So do I hear you requesting an adjournment to the next meeting to
Yeah, you
address
can.
the issues? Thank you. So I'm going to move that we accept the applicant's request for an adjournment to March 13th for 17 Roscoe. Do I have a
18.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Before I get lost again, hang on. Okay, next up, I move that we accept the applicant's request for 83 Lewis Street for an adjournment to March 13th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move we accept the applicant's request for adjournment to March 13th for 48 Bellows Lane to propose new windows and skylights. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We haven't taken jurisdiction for the next one, so I just move on, correct? Thank you. And next up is, new matters is 30 Hunting Street. Are the affidavits in order?
Yes, they are.
Oh, great. So next up is 30 Hunting Street for the construction of a 2-story single-family dwelling with detached garage.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Matthias Turner. I'm the architect for the property, and I'm presenting it on behalf of the owner.
Great.
Do we have a chance to get the plans up? Otherwise, I have to put them here on the
You can
table.
put, the wonderful news I have for you is you can now put them on the table.
Our camera
Because
is working.
good friends in the back and our good friends of the building department have now made it possible to see plans again, which is fantastic. And then you can stand here, refer to the plans, because they've mic'd the table as well, so.
You have a microphone?
Sage and Company has done a great job for us.
Perfect. Okay, so we have an almost empty lot. As we already discussed, there is an existing accessory structure on it, and we are still awaiting for a ruling on the demo permit.
You are?
And I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful that this will happen sooner. And other than that, the lot is empty, and we are proposing a 2-story building with a detached garage. The building.
Can I just interrupt and ask Alex a question? So the structure in the rear has been used was used in the past as a residence and living structure. Assuming it were not to be approved for demolition, would that impact whatever it is they're proposing in terms of, again, the square footage and stuff? I just want to make sure we're not wasting our time here tonight.
If I understand your question, you're asking if the building were to remain, would that affect their area calculation?
Yeah.
My understanding is yes, because I believe the only deduction you would get is for a garage that is only for garage purposes.
Matthias, excuse me, is that illegal? Sorry, landscape architect.
There's no,
That house is not.
there is
legal.
not a separate CO on that structure.
Well, I'm familiar with the street, so I know for the last 20-plus years, and my wife can attest to more than that, that was a residence. So
Not legally. There's no CO, it doesn't exist.
I know somebody was living in there,
Yeah.
so.
It was squatted.
If you're gonna speak, you have to come up and
Yeah.
introduce yourself.
So,
Dean Gorka, landscape architect. So I think there's some technicalities there on the legality of that house. It's not really a house.
it actually was a garage originally, which
Mhm.
was an accessory structure to the main building, which was on the property. And then after the main building, and that's just, hearsay, I have no proof of that, but after the
You
main
can-
building was demolished, then the owner decided to modify the garage and move into the garage.
Okay.
And the only thing what we could find at the building department was, I think from 2005 or 2004, an application for an electrical panel, which was installed at the garage and then residence or whatever we will call this. But that's all we have, and therefore it's kind of an odd situation with this accessory structure, because nobody really knows what to do with it. And I assume, actually, I think you already went there, took a look at the building. The building inspector was there because he issued a new CFO.
Where we've been at it is, we've been waiting for them to approve Zach, so Zach could just give us sign off that there's nothing about it historic to keep us from removing it. We don't think there is, and I talked to Zach tonight, I don't think there is, but I want him to give us an
Right.
official answer
Yeah,
before.
okay.
So I
Okay.
actually think that we can move forward pending receipt of a demolition
Okay.
agreement.
Good. I mean, yeah, I think.
Because the way it is right now, the balcony's in front of what used to be garage doors. And
Right.
it's, yeah, and it's,
And the building is unsafe. I mean, it's falling
So
apart, basically.
let's go forward,
Okay.
and then just know that any comments we're gonna have tonight,
Yeah.
if we were to approve it, would be pending receipt of a demolition agreement.
Yeah.
Permit.
So, we have placed this building in the, appropriate setbacks. And we have, as you can see, I don't know if we can get this one on the screen. Yeah. So you can see that we have the garage moved next to the building, 10-foot distance, in order to allow a larger area in the back for a recreational area with pool and sun deck and barbecuing, etc. Because the lot is only 80 feet wide, and we thought it is appropriate and would make more sense to have a full width of the lot available for the pool and for recreational activities. I am moving forward to the elevation.
Okay.
So, since it is kind of an odd shaped property and, as I mentioned, narrow, the challenge was to create a building which looks presentable to the street. So it has a curb appeal. And this here, this is the face which is showing to the to Hunting Street. We have a roof which is which we pulled down. It's about 10'9" above ground. The building itself is only 26.5 feet high, and we have our total square footage is 2,944 square feet. So we are within the GFA, and we are showing typical windows, 2/2, and having also facing the street side windows which have a diamond-shaped glazing. We have cedar shakes as the roof material and white shingles as the siding. Fascia, freeboard, and windows are also in white. And
What's the trim color?
I'm sorry?
The trim color around the windows?
White.
Okay. Looks black.
And no, definitely not. Even though it looks darker, but this is a matter of the line weight of the drawing. Here we see the side view with the relationship to the garage. The garage has it's a one-car garage, has a typical door with some lights on the top, and basically we were breaking up the facade so that we are taking that we don't have such a monotonous front. And on the next page you have the perspectives which are showing the different views. And again, this view here is the view from the street. We were sort of looking at all the neighboring buildings and basically were following the aesthetic guidelines which were introduced already on Hunting Street, and using similar materials and proportions so that it doesn't look like a stranger in this elevation of the street. And on the last page we have the information about the material. And again, it is cedar shake for the roof. It's white for all the trim and corners and freeboards, and it is a white dipped shingle as the facade. And we have zinc gutters and leaders. So it's a very humble sort of proportioned building for the size of this property.
Okay.
That's what I have.
Okay. Board members? Jeff?
So Mateus, you're right. It's not necessarily a stranger to this street, but regrettably, and unfortunately, that's regrettable.
It's what? I'm sorry.
It's regrettable that it's not a stranger. I could show you a picture of this street, which I'm very familiar with, a mere 30 years ago, that it had houses of, maybe the largest house on the street was 2,400 square feet. And there were yards in the front, and it was very much a neighborhood. Now the entire, although with this house, the entire south side of the street would be very large houses, very close to one another. So my comment, and let me speak if you may, is that I think you could be more creative in providing some verticality. I think the fact that it fits, as wide as it can and exactly in the envelope, geometrically is to your credit. But I think it could be more imaginative. It just seems to me to be a bit boxy and wide. The fenestration on the east side by itself is nice and fine, but it's going to be a mere not even 30 feet from the neighbor. So it's a lot of windows facing right into the neighbor. I don't know if we can avoid that at this point. But I wish we could. But again, looking at the front, I think it's the scale. Again, I'm not going to say it's not unlike the scale of some of the other houses on the street, but I'd be much more inclined to vote favorably for this if, in fact, there was some verticality and it just didn't look like a box meant to fit into the envelope with the roof angled down so it fits the plane. I question a little bit the fenestration of the diamond-shaped windows, but I don't know. You folks may have a comment on that. So anyway, those are just a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the house seems a bit bulky. The massing seems a bit overwhelming. And the orientation of the house is such that the side door would appear to be the front door based on the positioning and the design of the house. It's a little confusing, actually, to me. And I don't, the front door, well, I guess those are for the bedrooms in the basement. The openings on both sides of the front door just seems odd to me, the positioning. And the parking spaces, I don't understand that either. You're breaking up essentially your backyard between your quote-unquote recreation area and the house with 3 parking spots. I'd almost, rather see the house pushed back, and in this case, parking somehow in the front of the house. It just seems odd to me to have the parking positioned the way it is. And I agree about
You mean this parking here, right? Yeah.
Yes, and there seems to be a lot of hard space in this design as well. And the windows, I think, are a little fussy. The diamond patterns and the 6/6, and it just seems a bit much. And I agree that from a privacy standpoint, the windows on the, the east side, it's problematic.
Okay, I'm listening carefully, and
Good, because now I'm going to tell you what I think.
okay, please.
First of all, and I'm just going to say this because I said it to you before, I do not understand. You have something that nobody else has. You have a pre-existing, non-conforming garage that you couldn't build today.
Yeah.
Sitting in the back corner of that lot that you could renovate, put cars back there. Instead,
fully aware of it.
Instead, you've pushed the pool into the shadow line for the remainder of the day, and you've taken up this huge expanse of the backyard with a single-car garage and a parking pad, and taken away the enjoyment of the backyard. So I don't understand that, but that's one comment that I'll make, and that's yours to figure out as presented. But and we've talked about this, there's an opportunity here that almost no one has that you have and that they're throwing away, but I'm just saying that. Now, as for the actual house, this whole idea of putting the rails across the front and these deep wells so the downstairs bedrooms can have patios is a non-starter for me.
Mhm.
Because the front of the house needs to be the front of the house and it can present to the back, but I think those deep
I missed
deep
that.
wells across the front, just because they're proud of that sort of violates to me the setback from the street. Because it's just an attempt to put patios for the downstairs bedroom that are proud of, and I could never support that.
Is that for egress, or is it?
Egress, yeah.
No, those are patios. Egress, you can put a wheel well and climb up
Right,
the steps.
okay,
These are patios,
exactly.
because there's double swinging doors
Got
that
it.
go into them.
Thank
Well,
you.
they are 4 foot deep, so, yeah, I mean, there are,
Yeah. So
there are
instead
half-
of windows,
yeah.
that you could go outside and put furniture and have a cup of coffee. So I think that sort of violates the reasons we have setbacks in the street. So I couldn't support that. I understand Jeff's comment. I feel like in a neighborhood where you have houses that are, I was getting my dimensions wrong, where we have north-south, most of the houses are actually north-south oriented on that street. And they keep getting wider and square, so if there's a way that in the verticality could pull back and for the appearance of more of a north-south orientation, even visually, that would be good. I do think that the diamond windows, so interesting, are a little bit fussy, and that and then when we go around to the side of the house, I do have some concern about the amount of glass you have facing the neighbor. It's almost a hard one to solve when we have these narrow lots with the houses, but think about that. In the back, I think it's odd to me that the columns don't go to the end of the returns. See where the columns don't match. Normally the columns at the back match the end of the gable end.
Mm-hmm.
And right now they're pushed in, which I think is kind of odd. I think they should go out and match the end of the gable end, as they do in most of the houses around here.
Yeah, I mean,
This sort of pork chop detail that sort of lines up. I think if you push the columns out to where they line up at the end of your gable
okay,
end, that wouldn't be so heavy back there, which I think is
Yep.
more in keeping.
we can do that.
I like the fact that if for solar panels not facing the street, great.
Mhm.
For the light fixtures by the front door, I think the scale of the fixture, the size of the door looks a little bit mingy, so you could think about that.
The paneling between the windows too, I think is a little much.
I always, what size is that door?
It's,
Is it a 9 or an 8?
it's 3'6" wide,
How tall?
8 foot.
8 foot, okay. Just think about that. Well, first, think about two things. Is there any protection in that front door?
What do you mean?
Overhang over that front door?
We do have, yes, we do have an overhang. It is about 1'9".
So if I walked into the house in the rain, I'd get wet waiting for someone to come to the door. I just think you may want to think about that, just a way to define the front door just a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And those would be my comments.
Okay. I mean, it is a very complicated puzzle game to fit a building which should have a certain width onto this very narrow lot. So when you're saying, so we have an 80 foot lot.
Yep.
I have a total setback on the side of 32 feet, so which gives me 48 feet to sort of work with.
Yeah.
And so, I will try to slim it down to have a more a north-south direction. But I mean, I have to get also a certain proportion of space, of inside space out of it. And so,
Why?
well, I need a kitchen, I need a living room there.
But why? Why? I'm sorry to be obstinate, but why? The rules say a house can be built to a certain size.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't say it has to be. So if you are struggling to scale it down, then you can scale down the whole house. I'm not, design it as you wish.
Mm-hmm.
But the board has been pretty clear that it's standing out as boxier and than the board would like. So to the extent that you can scale it back, make it more north-south or whatever, or if you choose to reduce the square footage, then you can. So these are all, choices that can be made.
I want to make one more comment.
Yes.
I owe you one apology, because when I was reading your north elevation, you actually, which is clear in the elevation at the front, your door actually insets, so you actually have about a 2-foot porch and then about a 1-foot overhang from the roof. So
Yeah.
it doesn't sit flat to the house, so take that, I was wrong in that comment, so I apologize.
I was walking Hunting Street up and down a couple of times,
Mhm.
just to get a feel for the proportion of the existing buildings. And in comparison to what's there, especially on the south side, this is in the middle of the
I
volume.
understand.
So it's not, I just want to make this point, that it's not a building which is, extraordinary large in terms of its volume compared to all the other buildings on that street.
What
Not-
might be
not
nice,
all the
what
buil-
might be nice is if we could see a streetscape of this house with the two houses on the other side, so we see proportionally how it relates to
Sure.
the houses on either side.
And in fairness, I think we're both saying the same thing. At the end of the day, you need the number of votes, at least 3, to get approval. And yes, on the south side of that street, and you're talking to someone, and I think maybe you know, I've lived on that street, okay? And my wife was born on that street, and her grandmother lived in there since the 60s, okay? So I'm not unfamiliar with the street. We own 2 houses on that street. So I've seen it change. And like I said, it's unfortunate that a street that was once with houses of humble houses that stood on the 6 1/3 acre lots that are on either side of the house, I'm very familiar with it, were proportionate. They were 2,400 square foot houses. Unfortunately, the zoning code allowed for houses to be built the way they are now, 3,500 square feet and more. But again, that's what can be maximum built. So if you're challenged to scale it down, that's something you can choose to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to scale it differently, let's put it this way.
Right.
Our GFA is 2944, so in terms of what's in the neighborhood, this is also slightly smaller, and I checked.
On that side of the street. On the north side of the street, there are still houses, most of them,
You're correct.
that don't take up the full envelope, and that I dare say the house that's across the street, I think it's called the Little Cottage or something like that. If it's 2,000 square feet, it's a lot. So
My biggest issue is that the front entrance looks as though it would otherwise be the side of the house. I mean, it just doesn't, it looks awkward to me.
You need presence to the street.
Yeah, the presence of the street. If you would turn this house, 90 degrees and had a lot big enough, it would be a typical house.
I would do that
Right.
immediately. I would do
That's-
that
but
within a
that-
second,
Well,
but
I think
that's-
What we're
I think
saying
it's-
is that the
I think
design
what you're
doesn't.
hearing I think what you're hearing with that note is the front door does not feel like it has enough presence, or it has as much presence as the side door. And I would tell you, like, little things like even these small roof lines that you have over the first floor windows visually add width to the house. There are ways that you can actually pull the house in to reduce its scale to the street, and I think that's what we're asking.
Okay,
Okay?
very good.
Did I ask for comments from the public?
I don't
Not
there
yet.
comments from Are there comments from the public?
And while we read the comments, the public, I just wanted to point out the pool has to be shown 20 feet from each property line when we read the plans.
I'm sorry?
20 feet.
20 feet after the pool setback on the plans.
Right.
Just wanted to
Right.
point that out.
And
Okay.
I would urge them to think about that garage, but that's just.
I will certainly
right.
bring it on again to
Yeah.
the owner.
Yeah,
I did
'cause
it
I
already
promise
before,
you, yeah.
and,
I'd rather give you, okay, we'd rather preserve that and give you a turnout. All right, so I move that we accept the applicant's request for an adjournment to March 13th. Do I have a second?
Second. Oh,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Okay, next up is Driveway Gates Historic. I move that we accept the applicant's request for Matthew and Heather Stoppick at 40 North Main Street to be adjourned to March 13th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Then we have 154 Hampton Road Driveway Gate from Arden O'Connor.
How are you? You're back.
You missed us.
Sorry, again, yeah. Again, only I have the pictures on my.
If you just want to put it on the table.
Thank you.
Ramon, can you just introduce yourself?
My name is Ramon Chavez from Halcon Gate and Fence in East Hampton. And I'm representing the people 154 and Hampton Road.
Okay. Okay. Do we have a survey, Alex? Is there a survey in the file?
I have the survey here too.
Let me check, we should have collected one as part of the application.
Okay.
Yeah, if you just put it on the table, the camera will catch it. So let's see what it is.
It's is 22 feet from the road.
Yeah, they did provide a survey.
Yep, it's here.
Okay, great.
So here you go, here's the file.
Flip it, what the, oh,
Can you turn it,
can you
Ramon?
flip it just the opposite way?
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
The other one?
Which one do you want to turn? This one?
The survey.
The survey,
just-
have it just face it
like
like
this?
that. There you go. Is that what you want? Nope.
One
All the
more,
way around,
one more
time.
turn. There you
We're
go.
near it.
Keep going.
One more. There we go.
There you go.
We just finally got the camera back. We're very excited. We just don't know how to run it. We don't know how to run it. They're doing a good job. All right. So it's 25 feet off the road. Okay, and take us through the gate and dimensions, please.
Should be 22.
Okay, 22 feet off the road.
Yes, and
Okay.
it's 4 feet high,
Thank you.
and with the columns is a little higher,
Okay.
4.8, and the width is 14 column from column, and I think that's it. The spindles are 1.5 by 1.5, and the space is 5 inches each. It's
Okay.
good space.
Okay, so
And
this
this
is
is
the
made
old
on
one.
mesa,
That's
and it's going
shorter.
to be white.
Okay.
So do you have,
I don't
I don't
have
have
this. Did
the
you have?
drawing.
I didn't have it in my packet.
I think nobody had it in their packet. All right, let's give him comment, because I have a simple comment is, in the gate policy, we look for 40% transparency, and you haven't hit it. The lower panels would need to be shorter and the pickets longer in order to be see-through enough, because I think your transparency looks to be about 25% in that drawing.
Okay, so, and my comment to that as well, so when I echo that, the other thing is, I'd like to see the gate placed further back on the property. There are no gates on Hampton Road, and I think it's incongruous to have a gate, particularly that gate there, which doesn't have the level of transparency. I'd like to see the gate placed beyond the sidewalk, where there's a row of hedges that are about 25 feet back from the south edge of the sidewalk. That's where I'd like to see it. I think it breaks up Hampton Road to put a gate where none exists.
And
So,
it's also on a curve.
you know,
on a
if
busy road.
the owner, for whatever reason, and I learned after the last meeting, the owner's reasons have no bearing. We're an architectural review. So whatever their reasons may be, that's theirs. But from an architectural standpoint, if they could place the gates 25 feet back from the sidewalk, which is now, that would be about a total of about 40 feet or 45 feet from the road, then it would
Parallel
get
to the
my
hedge.
approval. Yeah.
Parallel to the existing hedge.
Well, I think there's a
No.
hedge on Hampton Road, and then there's a second
Second
hedge
Got it.
about 15 feet back.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let me talk about with my client about how far we
How
can.
far back they can place
we
it.
could- Yeah, we can place it. I get your point, it's,
Mhm.
okay.
Okay.
And, but about the, I know that you weren't always looking for the more than 50% of the density too, but, in this particular case, it's only 4 feet high. I think that
We still look for
the bottom part
our-
is very small.
We still have a transparency
No
requirement in our
problem.
policy, so we're gonna look for
Let me talk to
it.
them, make another drawing and talk to them.
You know, Ramon, there's a gate on Little Plains, just south of Meeting, I think. Or is it south of Herrick? There's a gate, it's about 4 feet, it's all spindles,
It's just off of Herrick.
just south of Herrick
Oh, yeah, I remember.
on Little Plains. You might want to take a
Yeah.
look down at that.
Yeah.
Alice,
right.
Okay.
Alice, you're looking at me.
Do I have any comments? Do I have any comments from the public? John, do you have anything?
No?
Okay, any comments from the public? Great, so
Thanks,
I'm
Ramon.
going to move that we accept the applicant's request for an adjournment to
Okay.
the meeting on May 13th. Do I have a
March
second?
13th.
March 13th, sorry. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thanks,
All
Ramon.
right, thank you.
He's a good sport.
Thank you, but I'm again. I'm the next one too. It's still.
Oh, are you?
You're back.
Then stay.
Well,
Next up,
And I was saying, Ramon's a good sport. We're happy to have you back.
Yeah, I think this one is hard.
next up is a new application for 145 Downs Path, proposed driveway gate. Are affidavits in order?
Yes, they are.
Great, thank you.
Okay, again, this is Ramon Chavez from Halcon Gate Automation in East Hampton. And I am representing the 145 Downs Path owner for the driveway gate.
Okay.
And this is going to be a driveway gate. I think this one comply the 50% can see through. And it's going to be in mahogany.
Okay.
And it's going to be 18 feet from the road. The highest point, the height of the gate is 6, and the highest point is 6'4".
Do we have a survey for this one?
Yeah, let me get that for you. It's a big lot.
Oh, okay, good. That was my next question.
Here you go, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. If you do us a favor, when you're bringing in gate applications, always include the survey with them, printed copies of the survey.
Okay, I will.
That's helpful.
I will.
It's actually required,
Thank you.
so. There you go. Well, as you heard us say, we have a policy. And the height of the gate is higher than that policy is, because it's, how big is the lot? The lot is approximately what, 3/4 of an acre?
It's 60,000 square feet?
3,000 square feet?
60,000 square
Oh,
feet.
60,
so
that's 1.3 acres.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's big.
That's bigger. Okay. But we do have a gate policy. We like them to be no more than 4.5 feet.
More than 4.
4.5 feet.
4.5.
So I think sort of the same issue, if we can just scale it down to that size and maintain the,
Yeah. Yeah.
the opacity we're
What
looking for.
what
But
I'm,
let me,
oh, I'm sorry. You
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Mr.
no,
You're the chair.
no, go ahead. Comment.
With all the rights and privileges thereof. So anyway, so there's an existing brick column there, or stone column, that happens to be 5'3" from the ground.
Okay.
I could look at it. And so if you were to keep that height at the ends and, have the gate 6 feet, I'm sorry, 6 inches down, you'd be at the 4.5 feet.
Yes.
So basically, Ramon, I think if you use the existing columns or the height of the existing columns as a guideline, you'd probably have something that would be fit
Right
into the guidelines.
Right where we need to be.
Yeah. In the past, I get permits for.
I know.
guess gates are
Ah,
the
the
same
past.
as-
We don't live in the past,
I know,
Ramon.
the past always,
Yeah.
always
I
changes, I
know.
know.
I know, I hear you. We heard about a lot.
I'm a change too.
Yeah, in the past I had hair.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
let me talk to my client.
Okay.
I'm back
Yeah.
again.
Thank
You know,
you.
it's
I
in the scheme of
understand.
things, it's not a big ask for two reasons. One, it's a difference of, I think, a foot in your case. The columns you're presenting here are 6 feet. The existing columns are a couple of inches over 5 feet. So it's not a big ask.
Please. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
I'm going
you.
to-
Any comments from the public?
Oh.
Okay. You are the public, Melissa. All right, I'm going to move that we accept the applicant's request for adjournment
Thank you so much.
Okay.
to March
Second.
13th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right,
Thank you.
Ramon. See you in a couple of weeks. You too.
Okay,
Thank you.
and now, last but not least, we have 1260 Meadow Lane. Are the affidavits in order?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
Hometown
you.
Beaches, Inc., 1260 Meadow Lane for proposed driveway gates. Hello.
Hello. Melissa Dedovich, Peconic Environmental Associates. I'm
Thank
here
you.
on behalf of Home Beaches LLC. I'm also joined online with Melissa Rivas from Ed Hollinger's office. If she could be let in, she's there. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, everyone.
Hey there.
So we're here on behalf of our client to actually replace, there was an existing set of gates there, which we can show on the plan, actually, right here. If you see here, what we're doing is actually, that's the original driveway. We're realigning the driveway. We're resurfacing, the tennis court is remaining, we're just resurfacing that right now. And we'd like to just put another set of gates, like I said, to replace the existing gates, and actually a little further back from the street as well. If we can go to the next shot. So these were the existing gates before we started redoing the property.
I don't know, they're kind of nice. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Wow, it's not that late, come on.
Are they historic? Right, no.
That's not, no. Anyway, so we'll go to the next gate. So I'll have Melissa describe the new gates.
Okay, so we're gonna be replacing those stucco and metal gates with a cedar picket gate that are flanked by two Connecticut fieldstone columns that have bluestone caps. The columns, I believe, I've got a drawing here to show some dimensions. The columns are 6'6", the gate's 6 feet, and it goes down to 4'6" in the center. We've done our transparency diagram requirements that shows that we are at 50.6% transparent. Everything will be clear western red cedar left to weather gray, which we're not painting anything. The next shot just shows the Cove B detail that we have around the edge that softens the corners. We have a 2-inch nominal pickets that are 1.5 actual size.
And the call box is actually on the post.
Thank you. That was the next question.
Yes.
You've
Call box
anticipated
will
well.
be on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No lights or?
No lights. Actually, the original post did have lights. These do not have lights. And it's a 4-acre property. And do we want to show the plan?
Yes, thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
this shows, it's 25 feet at its closest point off of the street. And it's set back, like Melissa said, a little bit farther than the existing gate. The existing gate also has some stucco curb retaining walls that meet the property line, and those are being removed as well.
And they're going to be replaced with the privet hedge that's being shown. I think it's going to look a lot softer than what was originally
Even
there.
just the colors.
Yeah.
Too.
Board members, John.
I think it's lovely. I don't have a problem with the height, given the size of the
No,
lot. It's
No, and it actually comes down
transparencies.
to about 4.5 feet in the middle
Yeah.
anyway,
Mhm.
so it's fine.
Could you show me the survey one more time?
Can we zoom in a
So how far back from the
Yeah.
street are you?
25 feet at the
25.
closest point.
So it's
The current fence, if you can see it, gate, if you can see it, actually is closer. We're just setting it back further outside of
Yeah.
that. And if you could see also on the current survey, there were actually stucco walls on either side, and those are
Yeah.
being removed.
Well, I kind of, well. I like the gate. I think it's very handsome. I think the transparency is great. What I'm struggling with is the height, to be honest with you. But given the size and the scale of the property, I don't think it's out of line for that. My question is, could you move it 5 feet back farther from the road?
It's actually in line with the properties, the gates on the properties on either side.
That wasn't my question.
I think you start,
Yeah, you can see these are the gates to either side. Is that where you're referring to, Melissa?
correct.
Yes.
I mean, presently, Melissa, just so we have enough room to pull in, get out, and put the code in the gate and get out, right?
Yes,
I
we
think
do.
what happens when you start going to the fight, you start trying to get out onto Meadow Lane, and that can be difficult in
So,
the
so I
summer.
guess the answer is no.
We prefer not to, if
Okay.
possible.
Okay.
If
Well,
I could, I'd give it to
I
you.
think it's proportionally fine to the property, so. And we try as much as possible to stick as close to our policy as possible, but for the larger 3 and 4 acre estates, we've scaled up here and there because they're proportionally right to the size of the property, so. Any comments from the public?
I am the public.
Well, I guess to your point, I mean, the rendering makes it look like it's 50 feet back from the road.
And yet it's not.
Well, what if instead of the curve, you just made it straight across at the top at the lowest point of the gate? Instead of the sweeping curve.
I think the sweeping curve is what makes it look elegant.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we certainly would like to keep the swooping curb if we can. I think we'd like to swoop it up because we think everything is in proportion with the posts to either side, and so if we can keep the scale of the gate, I think we would prefer to do that.
Or lower the entire swoop by.
I think, well, I think the choice is either you have to lower the gate by 6 inches all the way around, or, because if you lower the swoop in the center to the height that it
Yeah.
is right now, I think it starts to look wonky.
Yeah.
That's,
It would not be as visually pleasing, because it's a visually pleasing gate.
mhm.
So.
I mean,
6
let me
inches
ask, can I
across.
ask a question? If we set it back to, would 28 feet be okay?
It would be helpful, because visually, the farther away you get from the road, the smaller these gates are going to appear from the
I just
street.
don't wanna go too far back, cause I know trying to back up, and just personally, cause I go to Road Decent and the beach, just getting out, if people in the middle of summer are flying down that, this is at that curve there,
Yeah,
and they fly around, but, I mean, if we could probably set it back to 28 feet, which is still, currently it's at 22 feet.
if you could get it, the farther back you get it from the road, the visually smaller it's going to look from the road. And I think at a time where we're trying to make gates less
Mhm.
prevalent, I think that would be nice.
Well, that's also why we made it very transparent.
I know.
It's right, so, could we get approval based on setting it at 28 at the closest?
Can we do that?
Sounds,
Yes,
sounds
yes,
good
and
to
I think
me.
we can. Okay, so I'm gonna move that we accept the applicant's gate for 1260 Meadow Lane pending receipt of a survey a survey drawing that shows it 28 feet off the
Well,
road.
Let's see, is Melissa
28 feet
licensed?
at the closest.
I'm not licensed in
Licensed
anything.
to draw on this, okay.
I have a driver's license
You
and a
have a
paddy
driver's
car.
license, yeah.
So-
See, it's 25 here and 29.4 here.
So
So it needs to be 28 here.
At the closest. yeah.
That's the closest point is
Yeah.
25, actually. That's what I'm saying. That, it's not even like straight across at 25.
Okay.
So just be clear, it's 28 at the closest.
What would you like me to say, counsel?
That the application is approved based, but with the condition that we need revised drawings of the gate site plan, we'll call it, being revised to show the closest point of the gate being 28 feet from the road.
And we'll amend the survey as well.
So moved. Do I have a second?
I can't make the motion, you
No,
gotta make it
what?
say.
What?
Ditto.
Okay, so I move we accept the applicant at 1260 Meadow Lane pending receipt of a updated drawing that shows it 28 feet off the
At-
property line.
Off the roadway, at
Off
the,
the
Pavement.
at the closest
At the
point.
At the closest point. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I believe the only two applications, the next up, we have landmark designation. I know that we have adjourned 209 Windmill. We're waiting to hear from them. They're coming back to us next month, I believe, with an update. And the other, I think we have to officially give notice that we intend to initiate landmark designation proceedings at scheduled public meeting for 54 Wall Street.
Walnut.
Yeah.
Walnut Street?
Yep.
Okay. So is that a motion, or is it just?
If you could just make a motion that the
Okay.
board is gonna proceed
I
with
okay,
landmark
I move we
designation.
schedule a public hearing for the landmark designation for 54 Wall Street. Do I have a second?
Walnut Street.
Walnut Street, I'm sorry. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And is there a meeting that we're scheduling on 209 Windmill too?
No, we are waiting. They are to come back to us with a date. They told us they
Well,
would
this
be
is the
ready.
board's of-
They told us they would be ready in April for 209 Windmill Street, the
do
Bethel
we wanna
Church.
say-
You're breaking up.
So we should give them a date when
Oh, I'm
we're.
sorry. Can we say April 10th?
Yes,
on
we
the,
can.
On the agenda, so people know when to follow that?
That works for me.
Okay, so you want to just make that motion?
Okay, so I move that we schedule the landmark designation hearing for 209 Windmill Lane on April the 10th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now I'm going to move that we adjourn into work session and end the public session of ARB until we return. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I'm going to move we close tonight's meeting of the Board of Architects Review. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.